Chapter 735. For her own safety, Miao Ying silently retreated to the side and asked Xiaoling Yu to send her out of the primal chaos spectrum. Inside the primal chaos spectrum, Miao Ying and Xue Di were unable to complete their final advancement. Naturally, they couldn't communicate with heaven and earth in the primal chaos spectrum. Xiaoling Yu also asked Fudi to come out and let it protect Miao Ying. After entering the primal chaos spectrum again and arriving at Yueru's side, Xiaoling Yu couldn't help but worry for Yueru. Although Miao Ying and Xue Di had absorbed a lot of energy from Yueru's body, the energy that remained in her body was still very impactful. Although Yueru had a fiendish body, her cultivation wasn't high. She obviously couldn't withstand such a powerful energy impact. The seat-shaped magic treasure and the small pool were still constantly releasing strange energy to help Yueru suppress the energy impact in her body. Otherwise, her body would have already collapsed. The secret technique that the Shaman King used on Yueru's body was too strange. Xiaoling Yu couldn't understand it at all. Even though he wanted to help, he didn't know where to start. Just as Yueru's body was about to explode, a human-shaped cloud of mist suddenly surged out of nowhere. Xiaoling Yu found the human-shaped fog rather familiar. It was the same fog that had been transferred from Qi Hongxian to Yueru's body. The human-shaped fog shrouded Yueru's body and revealed the fiendish heart. The fiendish heart was like a giant beast that had been hungry for many years. After it appeared, it began to rapidly absorb the energy in Yueru's body and throbbed. As the energy in Yueru's body crazily poured into the fiendish heart, the human-shaped fog gradually became more and more solid. When Xiaoling Yu was in the narrow god world, he had searched the soul of a god emperor of the night demons. He knew that this heart was a sacred item that was kept by the night demons. The origin of this holy object was mysterious, but it could be inferred that the fiendish heart was left behind by an expert of the Azura clan, and its quality was definitely not low. Otherwise, the night demons would not have mobilized the entire clan to attack the narrow god realm, sacrificing so many night demons for it. Now that the enormous amount of energy in her body had a place to pour out, the pressure on Yueru was greatly reduced. Her expression gradually returned to normal. After nearly an hour, the fiend's heart and the human-shaped fog sank back into Yueru's body, and Yueru's body no longer emitted powerful energy waves. The small pool first hovered above Yueru's head, then suddenly exploded into a bloody mist and fell into Yueru's body. At this moment, the Shaman King, who was still recuperating in seclusion, suddenly turned pale. He opened his mouth and spat out several mouthfuls of blood. With an astonished expression, he said, "How is this possible? How could she endure such a huge explosion of energy?" The blood-refining pool actually forcibly removed its master relationship with me. It must be the work of that brat. He is really too hateful. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, the Shaman King once again entered seclusion to recuperate. The forcible removal of the master relationship from the magic treasure he had refined for many years had worsened his injuries. Yueru fell into a coma again, but Xiaoling Yu examined her and found that her breathing was very stable, and the energy in her body was circulating very smoothly. After this unforeseen event, Yueru could be said to have profited from a disaster. She had already reached the peak of the late stage of the Holy God realm, and this was without the Fiend's heart. The Fiend's heart could greatly increase Yueru's strength, just like how Qi Hongshuan's strength was abnormally powerful. What was certain was that once Yueru used the Fiend's heart, she would undoubtedly possess the strength of an exceedingly heaven-reaching expert, and not only in terms of cultivation, but also in terms of realm. If the Fiend's heart carried the strength of an exceedingly heaven-reaching expert, then the human-shaped mist could allow Yueru to possess the exceedingly heaven-reaching realm. As soon as Yueru's condition stabilized, Xiaoling Yu had Qing Xian and the other girls look after Yueru, while he left the primal chaos spectrum. At this time, Miao Ying was standing on the summit of a mountain. She stood there with her arms slightly spread, her beautiful eyes closed, and her beautiful head raised. The blood flute floated above Miao Ying's head, trembling slightly. Miaoing had always relied on secret techniques to increase her cultivation. In terms of realm, she should be lacking like Xiaoling Yu. This breakthrough was not without the slightest bit of danger. Xiaoling Yu fully unfolded his spiritual sense and began to help Miao Ying's soul force spread out between heaven and earth to communicate with nature, just like how his master's remnant soul helped him. When his spiritual sense spread out, Xiaoling Yu also discovered that the great power of nature in the surrounding space was constantly surging into the blood flute. The blood flute was already a divine spirit treasure. At this time, it was absorbing the great power of nature, which would provide convenience for Miao Ying when she used it to launch divine abilities in the future. After all, Miao Ying had been cultivating in the primal chaos spectrum for a long time. She also saw the small words in front of the light screen. In terms of perception, she was much stronger than Xiaoling Yu. Moreover, she had been comprehending for many years. Her realm was actually not bad. With Xiaoling Yu's help, she quickly learned how to communicate with nature. After Xiaoling Yu's spiritual sense withdrew, her soul realm began to rise continuously. The time Miaoing stayed in this state was much longer than Xiaoling Yu. Xiaoling Yu only used close to 100 years, but Miaoing stopped for a full 300 years. With divine spirit experts like Xiaoling Yu and Fudi guarding by her side, Miao Ying's cultivation was naturally not disturbed in the slightest. 300 years had passed outside the primal chaos spectrum. 3 million years had passed inside the primal chaos spectrum. To a place like the Divine Spirit Island, where experts gathered, 300 years was just a snap of the fingers. Even 3 million years was nothing to ordinary cultivators of the divine realm. After entering the primal chaos spectrum again, Xiaoling Yu found that Yueru had already woken up. However, he was silently sitting cross-legged in a corner, looking very lost. Xiaoling Yu wanted to go over and comfort him, but he did not know how to do so. In addition, Yueru glanced at him without any enthusiasm, so he tactfully walked away. "Hey," Jiang Lanchong went over to Xiaoling Yu and complained, "What did you go out for? 3 million years have passed in such a short time. I'm almost bored to death here." Xiaoling Yu smiled and said, "Actually, only 300 years have passed outside." "What?" Jiang Lanchong obviously did not believe him and said, "You're underestimating my intelligence, aren't you? This kind of lie is too low level." Xiaoling Yu knew that it was useless to explain, so he asked Jiang Lanchong to come out of the primal chaos spectrum and let her stay outside for 10 minutes before entering the primal chaos spectrum again. "Come and ask your sister how much time has passed inside." Xiaoling Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest, looking very expectant. Jiang Lanyue first asked curiously, "Sister Shang, how much time has passed outside?" "About 10 minutes, Jiang Lanchong replied. "Ah." Jiang Lanyue was very surprised. She said, "The flow of time in here is actually 10,000 times faster than outside. Sister, I know you're infatuated with him, but you can't team up with him to deceive your only sister, right?" Jiang Lanchong was still in disbelief. "I'm really not deceiving you," Jiang Lanyue said with certainty. Jiang Lanchong frowned slightly. She said, "If you're lying to me, you won't be able to get married for the rest of your life?" "Yes, I won't be able to get married." Jiang Lanyue first rolled her eyes at her sister, then nodded. "Is it true?" Jiang Lanchong was still skeptical. Xiaoling Yu was not in the mood to explain too much to Jiang Lanchong. He asked Jiang Lanyue, "Then the investiture of the gods should be able to be used, right?" Jiang Lanyue nodded again. "After 3 million years of sacrificial refining, I've already refined some of it. It shouldn't be a problem to use it once." Xiaoling Yu said, "I heard Grandfather Jiang say that the investiture of the gods can help many cultivators improve at once. Now that everyone is here, do you think, since it's going to be used once anyway, the more cultivators it can help, the better?" Jiang Lanyue did not refuse. Moreover, every cultivator the investiture of the gods helps is also beneficial to it. Without further ado, Xiaoling Yu gathered everyone together and left the primal chaos catalog together, waiting for Jiang Lanyue to cast the spell. Miao Ying, Qing Xian, Ling Fudi, Lil Bing, the devourer of heaven, and even Yuru were all invited out of the primal chaos catalog by Shaoling Yu. Everyone first found a valley. Then Shaoling Yu set up a large formation and added countless restrictions. Only then did Jianglan Yue take out the investiture of the gods. The investiture of the gods turned into a stone tablet that was 10 feet tall and stood in the middle of the valley. Jianglan Yue began to make hand seals and recite incantations continuously. The entire preparation process lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before it was completed. The stone tablet began to tremble slightly, and an ancient and vicissitudes of life aura constantly flowed out from it. Let's send your blood souls into the investiture of the gods, Jianglan Yue reminded loudly. At this time, sparkling and translucent beads of sweat had already seeped out of her forehead. Shaoling Yu and the other cultivators did not hesitate. They immediately sent the blood essences that they had prepared, wrapped in their souls, into the investiture of the gods. When the blood souls sank into the investiture of the gods, several powerful forces gushed out from the investiture of the god's stone tablet, acting on Shaoling Yu and the other cultivators, and closing the distance between them and the investiture of the god's stone tablet. Then, the investiture of the gods trembled even more violently. Waves of natural power of heaven and earth surged from all directions in the valley, constantly washing the bodies of Shaoling Yu and the other cultivators. At the same time, strange images appeared in front of them. Their eyes were closed, and their divine senses were drawn out uncontrollably. First, they spread between the heavens and the earth. Then they merged with the heavens and the earth. This investiture of the gods was equivalent to giving everyone another chance to merge with heaven and earth. No wonder it had the effect of increasing one's cultivation. And the natural power of heaven and earth drawn by the investiture of the gods would enter the cultivators' bodies, helping them increase the quality of their cultivation, nourishing their physical bodies, nascent souls, and expanding their dantian. The entire process of increasing one's cultivation had just begun when Jianglan Yue stopped her hand seals and incantations. She did not need to do anything after this. She just needed to wait for the investiture of the gods to complete itself. Jianglan Yue and Jianglan Chang had already used the investiture of the gods once and could not use it again. They could only wait in the valley. Chapter 736. Right now, the experts of Heaven Reaching Sacred Island were very busy dealing with the legendary turmoil. Aside from the unexpected appearance of the demon sealing pagoda, Shaoling Yu really couldn't see how Heavenly Saint Island would be in turmoil. However, looking at the worried looks on the faces of the top powerhouses, he guessed that there was an 80% chance that the turmoil would come. The experts couldn't even take care of themselves, so naturally, no one would run around, and no one would disturb the cultivation of Shaoling Yu and the other cultivators. Even the previous owner of the investiture of the gods, Jiang Shang, probably wouldn't have thought that the investiture of the gods could be used again so soon. Shaoling Yu and the other cultivators stayed in the valley for a full 50 years before the investiture of the gods stopped helping them. The powerful effect of the investiture of the gods was not a boast. In these 50 years, Shaoling Yu's soul realm and cultivation had advanced to the middle stage of the 9th transformation stage. The cultivation effect of the 9 revolution chaos formula far exceeded that of ordinary cultivation methods. Although the 9th transformation stage corresponded to the heaven-reaching realm of ordinary cultivators, Shaoling Yu, who was in the middle stage of the 9th transformation stage, should be able to easily deal with experts in the late stage of the heaven-reaching realm, unless those experts were the top existences of heaven-reaching Sacred Island and had powerful divine abilities or magic treasures. Naturally, Shaoling Yu wasn't the only one who had improved. Fudi and Miao Ying had also reached the middle stage of the heaven-reaching realm. The other cultivators had already reached the heaven-reaching realm. As long as they increased their cultivation, they could also become heaven-reaching realm experts. In this way, Shaoling Yu had a few more heaven-reaching realm experts by his side, and his overall combat strength had greatly increased. Perhaps it was because they had received the kindness of Jianglan Yue and her sister, but Miao Ying, Qing Xian, Ling and even Yueru's expressions towards the two sisters were much gentler, as if they were no longer against them joining. As for Fudi, Devourer of Heaven, and Xiao Bing, they were all a bunch of mischievous fellows. They didn't care about the trivial matters between women. As long as they could eat and sleep well, they wouldn't care even if the sky collapsed. At that moment, Xiao Yu began to help his relatives and friends who had yet to reach the heavenly ascension realm to improve their cultivation. He had a large number of psychic divine stones and many kind of high-grade materials, so this help was almost a piece of cake for him. After sending everyone back to the chaotic spectrum to speed up their cultivation, Xiao Yu began to plan to go to the jade pool of the sacred mountain to wash her body. It was worth mentioning that the yin-yang mirror, which had helped Xiao Yu in countless battles in the past, was basically useless to Xiao Yu now. Although Xiao Yu had reached heaven's ingress, the illusory monster he summoned from the yin-yang mirror was only at the peak of late Saint God. After all, the yin-yang mirror was only a divine artifact and not a divine, spiritual treasure. Naturally, its power would run out eventually. Naturally, it would be very difficult for the shadowy monsters, who were born from magical treasures, to unleash the power of nature. As a result, their strength could no longer improve. As he was thinking of a way to wash himself in the jade pool of the sacred mountain, Xiao Yu took out the dark golden box he had obtained from the demon ceiling tower and studied it. Xiao Yu had used all of his methods to open the box, but he still failed to do so. It was obvious that the box was of extremely high quality. The material of the box should not be inferior to a divine spiritual treasure. As such, Xiao Yu naturally had reason to believe that the treasure it contained was definitely extraordinary. The surface of the box was covered in fine, mysterious veins, which were very similar to the veins on the stone door that Zhang Fong and He Tai had discovered. Could it be that the method to open the box is the same as opening the stone door? Xiao Yu felt that his guess should be close to the mark. As a result, he did not forget to collect some materials for drawing veins when he collected various jade slips. The area of the box was much smaller than the two stone doors, so there were naturally fewer veins on it. As a result, it required fewer materials. However, due to the lack of a greater teleportation treasure like the tubular saint artifact, it took Xiao Yu a full century to collect all the materials. As for drawing the veins, it took more than 10 years. When all the veins were clearly drawn, the dark golden box suddenly shone with bursts of strange light. Then, it suddenly exploded into a cloud of dark golden mist. The mist surged for a while before gradually converging. Finally, it was absorbed by a dark golden dagger that was the size of a dagger. The dagger was less than a foot long and was dark golden in color. Its luster was restrained, but it was as thin as a cicada's wing and looked very sharp. On both sides of the dagger, mysterious blood-red veins were engraved. The hilt of the dagger had 2 rows of dark red gem-like beads, which made the dagger look a little demonic. If one looked closely, they would see the words life severing on the blade. Life severing, life severing? Xiao Yu smiled in satisfaction and then tried to drip blood on the dagger to claim ownership. As soon as his blood soul fell on the dagger, it sank into it and disappeared. However, the dagger did not react at all. Xiao Yu frowned slightly and dripped a few more drops of blood essence that were wrapped in his soul. The dagger still only absorbed it and did not react. Could it be that the method is wrong? But if it's wrong, it shouldn't absorb my blood soul. It's probably because the amount of blood soul is not enough. Let's try again. Thinking of this, Xiao Yu spat out a few mouthfuls of blood essence and a part of his blood soul. Then he attacked the dagger. When Xiao Yu had used nearly a third of his blood essence, and his face was pale, the dagger suddenly trembled violently. Then, the veins on the dagger became clear at the same time. What surprised him was that a wave of pressure that made him feel suffocated instantly enveloped the surrounding hundreds of feet of space. He immediately felt that his shoulders had become much heavier, and the speed at which he circulated his power had also slowed down by several times. In the next moment, the life-severing dagger stabbed at him. It was so fast that he only had time to reach out and block it. Even though Xiao Lingyu's palm was comparable to a divine spirit treasure, it was still directly pierced by the life-severing dagger. The wound was horrifying, but no blood flowed out. Xiao Lingyu felt all the blood in his body rushing to his palm, but it was all absorbed by the life-severing dagger. Xiao Lingyu was extremely shocked. He immediately reached out with his other hand, grabbed the hilt of the life-severing dagger, and pulled it out of his palm. In the time it took to take a breath, Xiao Lingyu had lost another 30% of his blood essence. However, the life-severing dagger released a ring of demonic red light. Then, Xiao Lingyu realized that the pressure in the surrounding space had become stronger. A special invisible force seemed to have solidified the space, and it even caused the fluctuations in time to be distorted. The flow of time in the space enveloped by the demonic red light was obviously much faster. In other places, it was very slow. It was as if the life-severing dagger was already in the space-time of the future when it was activated. With such a characteristic, once the life-severing dagger attacked, its opponent's defenses would probably be torn apart as soon as they saw it. They might even die in the next moment. At that moment, Xiao Lingyu felt as if he was connected to the life-severing dagger by flesh and blood. It was as if it was his palm, and he could wave it as he wished. Xiao Lingyu waved the life-severing dagger and swept it across a large tree 100 feet in front of him. A streak of chaotic saber light suddenly shot out. The strange thing was that as soon as the saber light appeared, the tree was already cut in half at the waist. The saber light then swept along the place where the tree was cut in half. The saber light's attack had not yet arrived, but it had already caused damage in advance. This kind of attack would cause any enemy to have a headache. After launching an attack, the life-severing dagger still appeared to be very powerful. Under Xiao Lingyu's will, it very obediently sank into his body and into his dantian, where it began to undergo further refinement by the chaotic divine infant. The quality of this life-severing dagger is probably already at the peak of divine spirit treasure. It just so happens that I'm lacking a powerful offensive artifact right now. It'll be very useful. Compared to obtaining the life-severing dagger, the wound on Xiao Lingyu's palm seemed insignificant. After he calmed himself down, he continued to wander around the markets, collecting the things he needed. All the jade slips that recorded the Sacred Mountain's Jasper Pool said that the Jasper Pool was one of the most important forbidden grounds of the Sacred Army. It was also one of the reasons why the Sacred Army was so powerful. The reason why the Sacred Army always had a large number of Divine Spirit Masters, and these Divine Spirit Masters were usually not ordinary people, was because of the Jasper Pool. The cultivators with good aptitudes in the Sacred Army had a much easier time obtaining the opportunity to enter the Jasper Pool to wash themselves. As cultivators cultivated for many years, it was inevitable that there would be some impurities in their bodies that could not be expelled. Their cultivation and bloodline might not be pure enough, but as long as they entered the Jasper Pool to wash themselves, this problem would be resolved. Moreover, the water of the Jasper Pool could nourish the flesh and bones, making the soul infant more stable and plump. It was quite useful to any cultivator. The Sacred Army would naturally guard such an important Jasper Pool. Even the experts of the Sacred Army would find it difficult to enter, let alone cultivators who were not part of the Sacred Army. It was said that the second strongest expert of the Sacred Army, the peak expert whose strength was second only to the sovereign of all saints in the Sacred Army, was stationed at the edge of the Jasper Pool all year round. Even the other peak experts of the Heavenly Saint Island would find it extremely difficult to barge into the Jasper Pool. Not to mention, other than the second strongest expert of the Sacred Army, there are also very powerful restrictions and formations around the Jasper Pool. Furthermore, the Jasper Pool was already surrounded by the experts of the Sacred Army, so it was basically impossible to sneak in without being noticed. Xiao Lingyu was naturally very disappointed when he received this information. It seems that unconventional methods won't work. Forceful attacks or tricks are basically hopeless. Do I really have to fight in the arena? With my current strength, As long as I completely refine the suicide dagger, as long as those peak experts don't participate in the arena, it shouldn't be difficult for me to enter the top 10. But I don't have a good relationship with the Sacred Army. Once I'm exposed in front of them, I'm afraid they won't treat me well. If only there was an equally powerful force backing me up so that they wouldn't dare to act rashly. The Peacock Bright Monarch and the other Earth experts might be able to back me up, but then it seems like I'll owe them a favor. If I owe them a favor, then so be it. It's better than being forced to hide in the chaos spectrum and be sealed for a long time. Chapter 737. Xiaoling Yu had been to the far-sighted King Hall once. With his memory, it was impossible for him to not know where the far-sighted King Hall was. In just a few months' time, Xiaoling Yu arrived at the entrance of the far-sighted King Hall and saw the Golden Peacock King. I am Xiaoling Yu. I request an audience with the far-sighted King. Xiaoling Yu cupped his fists and said politely to the Peacock King, "The far-sighted King is not in the far-sighted King Hall right now. He is yet to return." The Golden Peacock King opened its sharp eyes and replied calmly. Xiaoling Yu furrowed his brows and shook his fist at the Golden Peacock King. Then he turned around and left. However, when the far-sighted King left, he predicted that you would come, so he ordered me to pass a message to you. Just as he turned around, the Peacock King's voice sounded again. It continued, "The far-sighted King said that you can do whatever you want. The powerhouses of the Earth's bloodline still have some face on Skirich Saint Island. The far-sighted King truly has incredible foresight." Xiaoling Yu praised sincerely, then left. Just as Xiaoling Yu left, the Golden Peacock King flapped its wings and flew away with its back to the far-sighted King Hall. It was as if it had stayed at the entrance of the far-sighted King Hall to wait for Xiaoling Yu. In order to avoid trouble, Xiaoling Yu found a market he had never been to before and signed up for the Skirich Realm battle in the underground arena. In the past, Skirich Realm powerhouses rarely came out to fight, but now, with the organization of the Sacred Army and the attractive rewards, there were many Skirich Realm powerhouses who were willing to sign up. However, most of the Skirich Realm powerhouses who signed up had fought in the arena before, and they already had a good winning streak. Xiaoling Yu had won more than 70 consecutive battles in the Rakshasa Square when he was still in the Sacred God Realm. Now that he was a Skirich Realm powerhouse, his winning streak was naturally invalid. He had to start from scratch and win another 100 battles. During this special period, the rules of the Holy Army had changed. Any cultivator who was challenged could not refuse unless they had already won 100 battles. With this rule, the cultivators who participated in the competition later on didn't have to worry about not being able to find an opponent and not being able to accumulate 100 victories. Of course, a cultivator naturally couldn't accept consecutive challenges. Between two battles, they were allowed 3 to 10 years to rest and recuperate. After Xiaoling Yu signed up, he did not wait for the underground arena to make arrangements for him. He glanced at the list of divine masters who had signed up and began to challenge them one by one. It took 500 years for Xiaoling Yu to win 100 matches in a row and obtain the qualification to enter the Sacred Mountain for the finals. Xiaoling Yu used no more than the time it took to brew a cup of tea in each of the 100 battles. He easily defeated all his opponents. Such impressive results naturally attracted the attention of others. When he won over 30 battles in a row, there were still a few Skirich Realm powerhouses who were unconvinced of his strength who came to challenge him. However, after he won 60 battles in a row, not only did no one dare to challenge him, but everyone was also afraid of being targeted by Xiaoling Yu. The rewards for winning 100 battles in a row increased with each battle. Even if Xiaoling Yu was unable to obtain a very good ranking in the finals of the Sacred Mountain, he had already received a large sum of divine occultation stones. However, this was not what he needed. After sending the divine occultation stones into the primal chaos catalog for his friends and family to cultivate with, Xiaoling Yu took a jade tablet specially made by the Holy Army and set off for the Sacred Mountain. What he did not know was that the process of him winning 100 battles in a row had already been sent to the Sacred Mountain or other major organizations. The sacred mountain was located in the central region of Skirich Island. It was clearly the tallest mountain in a rather tall mountain range. Although he was stopped by the Holy Army when he was still several hundred kilometers away from the sacred mountain, Xiao Lingyu could still see the enormous silhouette of the sacred mountain. The sacred mountain was so tall that he could not see its peak. Halfway up the mountain, it already reached the clouds. It was clearly much taller than the other peaks. There were many shorter peaks surrounding the sacred mountain, like stars surrounding the moon. The area within 1,000 kilometers of the sacred mountain was the territory of the Holy Army, and there were many Holy Army cultivators standing guard. When Xiao Lingyu showed his special jade tablet, the Holy Army cultivators who stopped him let him pass. They also told him that he should rest at the Goat Horn Peak and pointed out its location. With the special jade tablet, Xiao Lingyu passed through more than 10 checkpoints before finally reaching the foot of the Goat Horn Peak as he wished. These were all open sentry posts. Xiao Lingyu could clearly sense that the closer he got to the sacred mountain, the more hidden sentries there were in all directions, watching every cultivator that passed by. The Goat Horn Peak was not very large. It was shaped like a giant goat's horn, and it was about 15 kilometers away from the sacred mountain. At this moment, there were many rings at the foot of the Goat Horn Peak. They surrounded the Goat Horn Peak. Each ring was square in shape, 500 meters in length and 10 meters in height. They were completely made of huge stones. At the foot of the Goat Horn Peak, there was a special reception for the cultivators who came to fight. As soon as Xiao Lingyu arrived, he took out his jade token and was led by a beautiful and delicate female cultivator to the stairs that extended halfway up the mountain. There were many caves halfway up the mountain, and each cave had many secret rooms. These secret rooms were originally used by the Holy Army cultivators for cultivation, but they were now specially used to receive cultivators who came to compete. "How many cultivators have come now?" Xiao Lingyu asked the woman. "Almost 100. I'm not too sure about the exact number," the late Saint Godwoman said very respectfully. "When will the finals begin?" Xiao Lingyu asked again. The date of the finals was just set a few days ago. It will officially begin in over 500 years. "Please wait patiently, Senior," the woman replied. They stopped at the entrance of a secret room. The woman opened a restriction on the door and pointed into the secret room, saying, "This is the temporary resting place for Senior. Please come in, Senior." Xiao Lingyu did not refuse. He strode into the secret room. After glancing around, he could not help but feel a little surprised. Rather than calling it a secret room, it would be better to call a suite. Moreover, the decor was extremely elegant. It did not seem like the residence of an ascetic cultivator. Instead, it seemed like a comfortable and luxurious guest room. Not only was there a living room in the secret room, there were also a few quiet rooms. The floor was covered with carpets, and there were calligraphy and landscape paintings hanging on the walls. The ceiling was inlaid with countless gems and pearls. There were even some exotic flowers and herbs that gave off fragrant scents scattered in the corners of the secret room. "Senior, are you satisfied with this place?" the woman asked. "I am," Xiao Lingyu replied indifferently. "Senior, you have been running around all this time. Do you need this junior to help you relax?" the woman asked again. Xiao Lingyu frowned slightly. He asked in confusion, "You help me relax? How can you help me?" The woman smiled and said, "Senior can arrange a banquet here. This junior can dance for Senior to liven things up." Xiao Lingyu waved his hand and said, "There is no need for that." The woman continued, "This junior is also skilled in some massage techniques. I can help Senior relieve your fatigue." Xiao Lingyu shook his head again and said, "There is no need for that. I'm afraid you won't be able to do anything to my body." The woman bit her lips and said as if she had made a great decision, "If Senior wants to enjoy sex, this junior can do her best to satisfy you. Senior, please rest assured that this junior is still a virgin." Xiao Lingyu frowned and asked curiously, "The service of the Holy Army is quite comprehensive. Does every cultivator who comes to compete enjoy such treatment?" The woman shook her head and said, "Only a portion of them." Xiao Lingyu smiled and said, "The Holy Army is quite generous. They are even willing to take out virgins at the late stage of the holy god realm. However, I don't need them. If there is nothing else, you may leave. However, the woman seemed to be slightly nervous and asked, Senior, do you dislike this junior's appearance? If that's the case, then this junior can ask other sisters to serve senior. Xiao Yu shook his head and said, It's not that your appearance isn't beautiful. It's just that I have no interest in it. Thank you for your kind intentions. The woman was slightly relieved when she heard that. However, she couldn't conceal her dejection. Xiao Yu took out a storage pouch that contained 10,000 divine communication stones and handed it to the woman. The woman didn't refuse. She took the storage pouch and bowed before silently leaving the private room and gently closing the door behind her. To be honest, it wasn't that Xiao Yu didn't like women. The woman from before could be considered pretty, but the grace of a beauty wasn't something that could be casually accepted. The Holy Army definitely had a motive for being so attentive. Xiao Yu didn't believe in free lunches. For many years, Xiao Yu had always felt that he could take what he needed. He would never accept someone who gave it to him for free. Moreover, even if he wanted to find women, Xiao Yu could find them in the Primal Chaos catalog. All of them were peerless beauties in the world. However, even if Xiao Yu could refuse a beauty, the other cultivators might not be able to do the same. After all, refusing a beauty was equivalent to refusing the Holy Army's kind intentions. After the woman left, Xiao Yu started to carefully inspect every corner of the suite. After he confirmed that there were no problems, he started to set up some restrictions and formations. Now that he'd attained the 9th revolution and reached the heaven-piercing realm, he had a deeper understanding of the Tao of restrictions and formations left behind by Liao Zhou. Coupled with the fact that he'd spent a lot of time in the Primal Chaos catalog to comprehend these things, he could easily set up some saint-grade formations and restrictions now. Even though the offensive and defensive standards of the restrictions and formations Xiao Yu set up might still be lacking, they were absolutely foolproof when used to isolate the divine sense of other cultivators. Even the divine sense of those top experts would find it difficult to penetrate through. After the restrictions and formations were set up properly, he entered the Primal Chaos catalog with ease. He only had to wait 500 years in the outside world, but he could wait 5 million years in the Primal Chaos catalog. Before the competition, Xiao Yu had to improve his strength as much as possible. Chapter 738. The woman who had led Xiao Yu to this secret room had brought a middle-aged Holy Army expert to the living room. The reason why the middle-aged cultivator was a Holy Army expert was because he was wearing golden armor and holding a golden spear. It was the standard attire of a Holy Army cultivator. Coupled with the woman's respectful attitude towards him, one could guess his cultivation. The woman was already at the late stage of the Holy God realm. Only heaven-reaching experts could make her treat him with such respect. You can leave first. The man waved his hand and instructed the woman. Then, he looked at the restrictions and formations in the secret room with a surprised expression. He muttered, He's actually a formation expert. No wonder his temper is so unusual. Then, the man began to knock on the restrictions on the doors of the secret rooms. Xiao Yu opened the door of his secret room and looked at the Holy Army expert. He cupped his fists and said, Is there something you need? I'm Yang Long, the manager of Goat Horn Peak. I've come to disturb you this time because I have a good matter to discuss with fellow Taoist. The person that came spoke with a smile, and his attitude seemed to be extremely sincere and modest. Fellow Yang, please take a seat. The two sat down in the living room. Xiao Yu continued, May I know what good matter fellow Yang has to discuss? Yang Long was still smiling. He said, Before we talk about that good matter, let's talk about something else. Xiao Daoyu is still wanted by my Holy Army. Xiao Yu's expression did not change. He said, It's just a small matter that I ruined the Holy Army's plans in the lower realm. With the Holy Army status in the God realm and heaven-reaching Sacred Island, you shouldn't care too much about such a small matter, right? That's no small matter. There is never a small matter in the Holy Army. Yang Long shook his head and smiled. He continued, However, This matter can be brushed aside. May I know how this matter can be brushed aside? Xiaoling Yu asked. The Holy Army is thirsty for talents. If fellow Taoist is willing to join the Holy Army, we won't mention those small matters again, Yang Long said with narrowed eyes. The Sacred Army is known as the #1 power of Heaven-Span Sacred Island. It has countless experts. Just like many cultivators of Heaven-Span Sacred Island, this one dreams of joining the Sacred Army. Xiaoling Yu paused for a moment, then changed the topic. However, I prefer to be alone and live an unrestrained life and cultivation style. Joining the Sacred Army will definitely have many restrictions, and I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to adapt. Hearing this, Yang Long naturally understood that Xiaoling Yu was tactfully rejecting him. He maintained a smile on his face and said, "There's no rush. Fellow Taoist, you can walk around the Sacred Mountain more in the next few days and get to know our Sacred Army better. Actually, the cultivators of the Sacred Army still have a lot of freedom, especially the Immortal Ascension experts. Also, fellow Taoist, you have to consider carefully and size up the situation. If you can't become a family, it's very likely that the higher-ups will look into the past." Xiaoling Yu could also hear the threat in Yang Long's words. He nodded and said, "I will definitely consider it carefully. By the way, the Sacred Army is holding such a grand event. I'm sure there will be many top experts attending, right?" Yang Long replied, "Of course there will be." Xiaoling Yu was half happy and half worried. He was happy that he could see the demeanor of many experts, and he should also be able to see many experts from Earth. He was worried that the Shaman King might also come. However, Xiaoling Yu said, "It seems that I will be able to see the Peacock King again soon. He has helped me before." Xiaoling Yu's seemingly casual words caused Yang Long's expression to change slightly. Yang Long's state of mind was calm. His expression returned to normal, and he didn't ask any more questions. He chatted with Xiaoling Yu about the situation around the Sacred Mountain, as well as some experts in the Immortal Ascension realm who were popular favorites to win the championship. Then, he bid farewell and left. After Yang Long left, Xiaoling Yu had just sat down when the woman entered the secret room again. However, this time, she wore very little. She only wore an almost transparent gauze dress. Not only were her arms and calves completely exposed, but it was also low-cut. The worst thing was that because the gauze dress was too thin, Xiaoling Yu could even clearly see the woman's full breasts, as well as the 2 bright red spots on them. He could also see her flat lower abdomen, as well as the sparse black grass below. Frankly speaking, this woman's figure was not bad. She had a curvy front and back, and she looked as gentle as water. In addition, her eyes seemed to contain a pool of autumn water. If a cultivator with weak willpower was here, they would probably pounce on her directly. "Senior, you must be tired after cultivating in the secret room for so long. Junior will massage your back for you." The woman was very proactive this time. Without waiting for Xiaoling Yu to refuse, she had already arrived behind Xiaoling Yu's seat. A pair of soft and seemingly boneless jade hands rested on Xiaoling Yu's shoulders, and she gently massaged them. Xiaoling Yu couldn't help but tremble. Although he subconsciously wanted to walk away, after thinking about it, he continued to sit on the chair and only twisted his neck. It wasn't that Xiaoling Yu wanted to enjoy himself, but that he didn't want to offend the Sheng Jun too much. He wanted to leave himself some leeway before entering the jade pool. If he rejected this woman's kindness and enthusiasm, the Sheng Jun would definitely think that Xiaoling Yu couldn't be won over. Who knew what kind of tricks they would use next? It was better to fool them for a while first. In any case, this woman couldn't possibly do anything to him. At first, the woman was very well behaved. She only massaged and massaged. Due to the high quality of his body and the unintentional gentleness of this woman, Xiaoling Yu naturally didn't feel the slightest bit of enjoyment. However, he pretended to enjoy it very much. But after a few minutes, the woman seemed to have become bolder. She pressed her chest tightly against Xiaoling Yu's back. Xiaoling Yu couldn't help but tremble a little when he felt the warmth. The woman's jade hands, which were originally massaging Xiaoling Yu's shoulders, moved down Xiaoling Yu's neck and into Xiaoling Yu's arms, caressing Xiao Lingyu's chest. Although Xiao Lingyu wasn't a gentleman, he was still a little repulsed by this kind of unwarranted intimacy with the opposite sex. Other men might be able to easily accept having intercourse with a woman who didn't have any feelings for him. After all, the dual cultivation technique was beneficial to everyone, especially when this woman was still a virgin. However, Xiao Lingyu, who already had 3 wives, felt extremely awkward. His body also became unnatural. However, Xiao Lingyu still forced himself to smile. Then, he pulled the woman from behind to the front and made her lie on his lap. Xiao Lingyu forced himself to smile lewdly at the woman. Then, his hands began to caress her jade legs. Gradually, he moved up and kissed her forehead. But just as his hand was about to touch the key point, his expression suddenly changed. He said, "Oh no, my emotions are fluctuating abnormally. I'm afraid that my inner demons have been drawn out. Miss, please leave first. Let me stabilize my emotions first." The woman felt that she was about to complete her task, but at this moment, she was stuck. Naturally, her face was filled with hidden bitterness and depression. However, she could only walk away silently. Closing the door of the secret room again, the woman said with a smile, "I thought he was a gentleman. It turns out that he's the same as other men. However, this is also good, being able to dual cultivation with such a strong cultivator once. My chances of advancing to the connecting heaven stage will be higher. I can also receive praise from the higher-ups." Xiao Lingyu strengthened the restrictions and formations in the secret room again. Then, he entered the primal chaos spectrum again. Just now, when he was touched by that woman, he wanted to come in and find Miao Ying or Qing Yu to vent. However, when he entered the primal chaos spectrum, he remembered that his 2 wives were both pregnant. Although there wouldn't be any problems as long as he controlled it well, it was inconvenient after all. It was very difficult to enjoy himself to the fullest. Thus, he gave up on this plan. At this moment, he couldn't help but think of Anya. However, just as he was feeling depressed, Linger, Yueru, Jiang Lanyue, and Jiang Lanchang occasionally passed by him. Looking at their enchanting, graceful figures, Xiao Lingyu's originally depressed expression became a little pained. Fortunately, Xiao Lingyu's state of mind wasn't low. He was able to easily abandon the distracting thoughts in his mind and quickly entered a state of meditation. Carnal desires couldn't make him lose his mind. Another 300 years passed outside. The curtains of the finals of the grand arena, hosted by the Sacred Army, finally opened. In these 300 years, the woman who was ordered to serve Xiao Lingyu was extremely depressed. She waited day and night, but only saw Xiao Lingyu's face when the competition was about to begin. Time was tight, so she naturally couldn't do what she wanted with Xiao Lingyu. When he came out of seclusion, Xiao Lingyu ignored the woman's resentment and walked straight out of the cave. He then walked down the stairs to the foot of the goat horn peak. To Xiao Lingyu's surprise, there was a ring of spectator stands around the goat horn peak. The spectator stands surrounded the goat horn peak in the arena at the foot of the mountain. The spectator stands were already filled with cultivators who came to watch the competition. Most of the spectators were cultivators of the Sacred Army. In addition to some well-known experts who were invited by the Heavenly Saint Island, there were also many ordinary cultivators. Those ordinary cultivators were able to come here not only because they paid a certain amount of spiritual divine stones, but also because the Sacred Army intended to open up the competition. At the top of the Goat Horn Peak, there was an auspicious cloud with a row of cloud chairs. The top experts of the Heavenly Saint Island were sitting on the cloud chairs. Among them were the Peacock Bright Monarch, the leader of the Sacred Army, the Thousand Saint Sovereign, the Shaman King, and the Son of Measure. Although the arena was presided over by the Sacred Army, it was clearly a major event that all parties of the Heavenly Saint Island paid attention to. There are 1,000 sacred gods and 320 Heavenly Saint Island experts who came to participate in the competition. They are all outstanding cultivators who have won 100 battles in those markets. The competition will first use an elimination system. After 3 rounds, there will only be 200 sacred gods and 40 Heavenly Saint Island experts left. Then, there will be a free-for-all. The so-called free-for-all is the cultivators who can continue fighting after 3 rounds of elimination are divided into 2 realms. All of them will gather on the battlefield of their respective realms. Everyone will fight together, and their rankings will be determined according to the order in which they are eliminated or killed. The one who can last until the end will naturally be first place. The matchups of the elimination round are decided by lots drawn by the top experts of the Heavenly Saint Island. There is no possibility of cheating. Chapter 739. It could be said that none of the cultivators who could fight on the Goat Horn Peak were weak. How could they be mediocre if they could win 100 battles in their respective realms? The battles on the Goat Horn Peak could definitely be considered as choosing the strongest among the strongest. The battle between heaven-reaching realm cultivators was extremely loud, and a mere several hundred feet of arena was naturally unable to withstand it. However, in order to ensure that the battles proceeded smoothly, the top cultivators of the Sacred Army worked together to set up a powerful restriction on each arena. It could prevent the battle from spreading out of the arena. These powerful restrictions did not restrict the heaven-reaching realm cultivators from borrowing the power of nature, nor did they restrict anything from entering the arena. They only restricted the energy that erupted from the arena from spreading out. The elimination round began very quickly. Xiaoling Yu's first opponent was a heaven-reaching realm cultivator in the late stage. This one is Bao Bing. Please enlighten me. The opponent wore a smile on his face, as if he was very relaxed. Xiaoling Yu. Xiaoling Yu's expression was indifferent, and he did not have any intention of speaking nonsense. Dong. A bell rang, and the battle officially began. The number of heaven-reaching realm cultivators was far less than the number of sacred god cultivators, so there was only 1 arena for heaven-reaching realm cultivators and 9 arenas for sacred god cultivators. As a result, most of the spectators and the top cultivators of heaven-reaching Sacred Island on the Goat Horn Peak were focused on the arena for heaven-reaching realm cultivators. Every battle had a time limit of 4 hours. If a victor could not be determined within the time limit, both sides would be directly eliminated. Thus, both sides standing on the arena would do their best to defeat their opponent within 4 hours. 4 hours to fight a match, even if there was only 1 arena. The first round of the reaching Heaven Realm elimination matches would be over very quickly. Perhaps he was anxious to determine the victor within 4 hours, or perhaps he was confident, but after the bell rang, Bao Bing did not raise his aura. He suddenly stomped on the ground and charged in front of Xiaoling Yu. A divine spirit treasure like a sharp thorn stabbed towards Xiaoling Yu's chest. The opponent's realm was quite high. Without using the wings of extreme speed, Xiaoling Yu's short-distance movement speed and reaction speed were inferior to the opponent's. Therefore, Xiaoling Yu didn't dodge. Instead, she placed 1 palm in front of her chest and used her bare hand to block the opponent's attack. At the same time, her other hand slapped towards the opponent's shoulder. A blow for blow. In that instant, Bao Bing thought that the attack from his celestial spiritual treasure would definitely be stronger than his opponent's palm attack, so he didn't change his move. The spike pierced Xiaoling Yu's palm, but it did not pierce through. Instead, Xiaoling Yu held it tightly. Bao Bing was shocked. With the advantage of having a higher cultivation level, he could have dodged Xiaoling Yu's other palm attack, but if he did, he would not be able to retrieve his spiked Dharma treasure. If the Dharma treasure was taken away by the opponent, how would the battle continue? After thinking quickly, Bao Bing's body was enveloped in a circle of divine power in an instant. He wanted to use this to block Xiaoling Yu's palm attack. However, Bao Bing didn't expect that his defensive skill would be directly shattered by the opponent's palm, and a huge force smashed into his shoulder. Intense pain came, and Bao Bing's body involuntarily flew backwards. What a strong force! Bao Bing steadied himself in the corner of the arena. Looking at his spiked Dharma treasure in the opponent's hand, he was incomparably shocked. Just a moment ago, Bao Bing felt that he hadn't been hit by a palm, but rather a celestial spiritual treasure. As a powerful fighter in the late stage of Heaven Ascension, Bao Bing's physical body was comparable to a high-grade sacred weapon. Coupled with his defensive skill, he still couldn't block the opponent's seemingly simple palm attack. From this, it could be seen that not only was the opponent's strength strong, but the quality of his physical body was clearly beyond the scope of a sacred weapon. Could it be the physical body of a celestial spiritual treasure? Bao Bing was puzzled. At the moment, he didn't dare to attack rashly. At least, he didn't dare to fight in close combat with the opponent. As for the spiked Dharma treasure, it was now enveloped by the primordial fire, and Bao Bing's divine consciousness couldn't communicate with it at all. What made Bao Bing even more surprised was that his Dharma treasure had only been enveloped by the primordial fire for a few breaths' time, but had already begun to tremble, as if it couldn't withstand the fire. After hesitating for a moment, Bao Bing began to communicate with the nature of heaven and earth, guiding waves of invisible mighty force into the arena to increase his momentum and strength. He wanted to use the advantage of his cultivation level to suppress the opponent. Xiaolin expression didn't change. His divine consciousness also came out of his body, resonating with the nature of heaven and earth, and borrowing the power of heaven and earth to resist the oppression of the opponent's cultivation level. Even if he gave it his all, the disadvantage of his cultivation level meant that Xiaolin couldn't completely block the invisible mighty force that his opponent had drawn in. His own strength was weakened by a lot. However, this situation was within Xiaolin expectations, so it didn't affect his state of mind. The reason why Xiaolin felt that he couldn't face the peak experts of Skirich Saint Island was because the difference in cultivation level was too great. Once those peak experts used their advantage in cultivation level to suppress him, many of his techniques wouldn't be able to display much power at all. He might even completely lose the ability to fight back and be beaten up passively. After all, Bao Bing wasn't a peak expert. His advantage in cultivation level over Xiaolin wasn't very obvious, and his attacks seemed a little weak compared to Xiaolin powerful defense. Having lost the offensive Dharma treasure he was most proud of right from the start, Bao Bing could only rely on the invisible mighty force to launch attacks with spells and seals. Although he could still hit his opponent's cultivation level and primordial fire defense were already powerful. Coupled with his tough body, his attacks couldn't do much damage to his opponent at all. Although Xiaolin Dantian was greatly shaken, his chaotic divine infant was tightly protected by rings of chaotic light, so it wasn't affected at all. Naturally, Xiaolin couldn't just dodge and defend like that. He constantly moved around the arena, leaving something behind wherever he went. He also quickly set up some restrictions to hide those things. Soul Seal. Bao Bing's attacks lasted for 20 breaths of time. Xiaolin, who had been hit more than 10 times, finally stopped. He smiled at Bao Bing and suddenly shouted loudly like thunder. He stomped his feet and waved his arm in front of him. The scenery in the arena immediately changed. Waves of fog appeared out of thin air and filled the entire arena in the blink of an eye. Under the influence of the rolling fog, the invisible restrictive power was actually able to devour the soul strength of an exceedingly heaven-reaching expert. In other words, the fog could isolate a cultivator's divine sense, so it couldn't penetrate the arena and communicate with the mighty force of nature outside. In this way, Bao Bing's advantage in cultivation level naturally didn't exist. In the 5 million years in the chaotic spectrum, Xiaolin had been studying the Tao of restrictive formations passed down from the universe. The main direction of his research was to find a solution to the problems he would encounter when facing Skirich experts of a higher cultivation level. The restrictive formation set up in the arena was called the Soul Seal Formation. It was Xiaolin harvest in the 5 million years in the chaotic spectrum. Although it was his first time using it in actual combat, the effect seemed to be pretty good. With the help of the Soul Seal Formation, Xiaolin completely turned the tables, and he went from being passive to being active. The wings of extreme speed appeared behind him, and his speed was no longer slower than Bao Bing's. After all, the arena wasn't big, and there was a time limit to the battle. Bao Bing had no choice but to fight Xiaolin head-on. Unfortunately, Bao Bing's offensive Dharma treasure had been taken away by Xiaolin, so he could only defend himself now. Bao Bing originally wanted to defend himself for a while to exhaust his opponent's cultivation and state. However, he didn't expect that he would fly out of the arena uncontrollably after being blasted by his opponent's seal. Bao Bing didn't know that the seal was a chaotic seal, and it was a chaotic seal that was fused with the illusory sky restriction. Shaoling Yu had advanced to the 9th refinement stage, and the quality of the chaotic divine power in his body had increased by a lot. The chaotic seal formed by this was originally very strong, and with the support of the illusory sky restriction, ordinary cultivators will be blasted far away, even if they could withstand it. Thank you for letting me win. The result was out. Shaoling Yu cupped his fists and waved at Bao Bing below the arena, then walked down the arena slowly. Not long after he left the arena, the fog that pervaded the arena dissipated. It was obvious that although Shaoling Yu's soul-sealing array was powerful, it couldn't last for too long. From the beginning of the battle to the result, it actually only took 100 breaths time. This was the way it was when experts had to decide the winner. There was no need to fight until the sky turned dark. Usually, the result would be decided within a few moves. For Shaoling Yu, who was aiming to be in the top 10, winning the first round easily was within his expectations. After he left the arena, he didn't feel happy or worried. He didn't look at the rest of the battle and returned to his secret room. Senior's divine power is really extraordinary. You defeated your opponent so quickly. The woman who had seduced Shaoling Yu before came over again and praised him with a smile on her face. Shaoling Yu only smiled faintly and didn't reply. After he entered the secret room, he went back to the quiet room that he had set up layers of restrictions. As for the attentive woman, she naturally could only helplessly wait outside the secret room. The first round of the competition had nearly a month's time to begin with. Additionally, after the first round of elimination, everyone would have 5 years to recuperate. For ordinary cultivators, this period of time was only enough for them to meditate and adjust their breathing. However, for Shaoling Yu, this period of time was over 50,000 years. After strengthening the restrictions in the quiet room, Shaoling Yu entered the chaotic spectrum. He first meditated and adjusted his breathing, then began to study the soul-sealing array. Although the soul-sealing array had made a great contribution in this battle, it also exposed a fatal weakness, which was that it couldn't last for too long. Once he encountered an opponent with strong defense, Shaoling Yu might lose if he couldn't finish the battle within the effective period of the soul-sealing array. Moreover, the soul-sealing array had been exposed. He believed that his opponent in the next round would be prepared for it. Not only did he have to make the soul-sealing array last a little longer, he also had to find some changes in it to prevent it from being easily broken by his opponent. Chapter 740. The arena had not changed, but the opponents had. The cultivators who could participate in the finals were all powerful cultivators in the Heavenly Ascension realm. After passing the first round, they could be said to be the best of the best. Shaoling Yu's opponent in the second round was also in the Heavenly Ascension realm late stage. He seemed to be in the same realm as Bao Bing, but it was unknown how powerful he was. I am Jinji. Xiao Daoyu, please enlighten me. Shaoling Yu. Shaoling Yu was as calm and composed as ever. His expression made his opponent unable to see his current state of mind, but it made his opponent feel irritated. Everyone who came here was a powerful cultivator, and what they hated the most was other cultivators putting on airs or acting cool in front of them. Why are you putting on airs? You'll suffer later. Jinji secretly made up his mind. When the bell rang, his aura rose to the peak in an instant. Like a ferocious tiger descending the mountain, he charged with a powerful aura towards Shaoling Yu. Shaoling Yu frowned slightly. The speed at which Jinji raised his aura was the fastest among all the powerful cultivators he had ever seen. When the other party charged over, he felt as if a divine mountain was collapsing in front of him. The speed of a Heavenly Ascension realm cultivator was extremely fast. This distance of a few thousand feet was naturally covered in the blink of an eye. However, in this extremely short period of time, Jinji had already communicated with the nature of heaven and earth. Waves of invisible power had already made Xiaoling Yu feel immense pressure. When he got close to Xiaoling Yu, a simple long saber that seemed to be made of bronze appeared in Jinji's hand. Rushing thunder slash. Jinji shouted loudly and leaped high. The long saber in his hand was wrapped in the power of heaven and earth, and it slashed down toward Xiaoling Yu's head. As the long saber fell rapidly, it dragged a bright flash of lightning that looked like a saber radiance. The saber and Jinji's body were already wrapped in arcs of lightning. The long saber was obviously a heavenly spiritual treasure. Coupled with the domineering and fierce saber technique, its power was naturally incomparably strong. Even if Xiaoling Yu could withstand this attack, he would probably not feel good. However, at this moment, he had already been locked onto by his opponent's divine sense, and the might of heaven and earth that his opponent had drawn upon made it impossible for him to raise his speed to dodge. However, even though Xiaoling Yu did not have the time to raise her aura and was unable to draw upon the power of heaven and earth, she was still able to use her supernatural powers to fight her enemies. All of a sudden, he stretched out a finger and pointed at the saber that was coming down on him. A chaotic light beam shot out from his fingertip. The chaotic light beam was filled with mighty divine power and was equally ferocious. It was formed by compressing the pure, chaotic divine power in Xiaoling Yu's body and was equally powerful. When the chaotic light beam hit the long blade, it instantly extinguished the lightning arcs on the long blade and the thunder behind it. However, the long saber still slashed down viciously. It first penetrated the defense of the primordial flame and then shattered Xiaoling Yu's protective shield. In the end, its power was reduced by more than half. Although it landed on Xiaoling Yu's shoulder, it only caused Xiaoling Yu's feet to sink into the stone platform. It did not break through Xiaoling Yu's body's defense. The long saber itself was not very powerful. It was only when it was combined with the saber technique that it appeared to be unparalleled. Relying on the speed at which he could raise his power and gather the might of heaven and earth in a short period of time, Jinji usually killed or injured his opponents in a single move. There were even many cultivators who were slightly stronger than him who were cut off the platform because they were not prepared enough. Since his attack did not succeed, Jinji immediately withdrew his saber and retreated. It seemed that Xiaoling Yu's snatching of the Bao Bing's sharp spike had attracted his attention. Jinji's specialty was that he attacked fiercely from the beginning until he defeated his opponent. Once he paused in the middle and gave his opponent time to prepare, his power would be greatly reduced. Xiaoling Yu's shoulder hurt a little. His shoulder bone was probably broken. However, he pulled out his legs and slapped a primordial chaos seal toward Jinji. After Jinji withdrew his long saber, he shouted loudly. The might of heaven and earth that he drew turned into a sky full of thunder and lightning in an instant and quickly occupied every corner of the platform. Zigzagging thunderbolts shuttled back and forth in the platform like dragons. All of them whistled and rushed toward Xiaoling Yu. Xiaoling Yu's primordial chaos seal had just left his hand. Before it could get close to Jinji, it was hit by the thunderbolts and exploded. The strong power of the primordial chaos seal swept away a large area of thunderbolts. However, the area that had just been cleared was then filled with thunderbolts that appeared out of nowhere. 1,000 thunderbolts slash. Jinji did not give Xiaoling Yu much time to prepare. After the primordial chaos seal exploded, he shouted again and threw the long saber in his hand into the air. The strange thing was that when the long saber was in the air, it turned into a thunderbolt and hid in the sky full of thunderbolts. It was difficult to pinpoint its exact location. At the same time, the thunderbolts that were wreaking havoc in the platform trembled slightly and turned into powerful thunder sabers that slashed from all directions. This kind of attack was impossible to dodge. However, because there were so many attacks, its power was naturally more powerful than the thunder slash from before. However, Xiaoling Yu could see that the real threat that the thunder slash could bring to him was the attack launched by the long saber. Unfortunately, he could not determine where the long saber was from among the thousands of thunder sabers. After all, He had just entered the 9 transformation stage not long ago. Although his cultivation was already at the middle stage of the 9 transformation stage, he rarely fought with heaven-reaching realm experts. The heaven-reaching realm experts that he had faced before were not the best in the heaven-reaching realm. At this time, he was at a loss. Jinji's fighting style was to beat his opponent with the force of a thunderbolt and defeat his opponent before they could catch their breath. Xiaoling Yu gave up the idea of hiding in the primordial chaos spectrum. After all, there were countless experts watching the battle. He could not reveal his trump card too early. There were still fierce battles to come. He had not entered the top 10. There was no better way to deal with it. He might as well take it head-on. Anyway, even if the long saber attacked, it would at most cause him some physical pain. The thunder sabers that filled the sky instantly drowned Xiaoling Yu. However, with the Primal Chaos True Fire Shield, the Primal Chaos Divine Shield, and his powerful physical defense, the damage that the thunder sabers could cause to Xiaoling Yu was only a scratch on his skin and flesh. Although his dantian was greatly shaken, whether it was the black and white primal chaos light released by the black and white yin-yang fish below the chaotic divine infant, or the 9-color primal chaos light of the 9 grass leaves above its head, they were all able to protect the chaotic divine infant very well. In addition, the primal chaos golden bead that the chaotic divine infant had swallowed would also help with its defense. The chaotic divine infant was not threatened at all. As long as the chaotic divine infant was intact, it could control Xiaoling Yu's cultivation without any hindrance. It would not cause his cultivation to become chaotic. In Xiaoling Yu's body, only his qi and blood were surging more violently at this moment. However, Xiaoling Yu was able to suppress it. All of Xiaoling Yu's attention was focused on searching for the long saber that was hidden somewhere. However, by the time he found the saber, it was already stabbing towards his lower abdomen. He's actually trying to assassinate my divine infant. Although Xiaoling Yu had already prepared the primal chaos seal to block, it was already too late for him to activate it. He could only use his hands to block the saber for both sides. However, at that moment, Jinji's saber technique changed. Countless lightning sabers gathered in the saber, immediately increasing the saber's power. At the same time, it rubbed against Xiaoling Yu's palms, piercing through Xiaoling Yu's lower abdomen and straight into his dantian. The chaotic divine infant also became nervous at this moment. It opened its mouth and spat out primal chaos fire and primal chaos divine power to strengthen its defenses. Although the saber was stabbing towards the chaotic divine infant, it was still restricted by Xiaoling Yu's palms. Furthermore, it had already pierced through the divine infant's defenses, so its power was greatly weakened. The tip of the saber could not even break through the barrier of light around the chaotic divine infant. All of the saber's power had been exhausted. Xiaoling Yu, on the other hand, pulled the long saber out of his body with a single move. Immediately, blood splattered everywhere. He did not care about the blood that was spurting out. A ball of primal chaos fire surged out of his hands and enveloped the saber. Although Jinji had severely injured Xiaoling Yu, he looked a little depressed when he saw that his saber had been pulled out and his opponent was still standing firmly in the ring. Jinji wanted to defeat or even kill his opponent with a single strike. Otherwise, he would not have let his Dharma treasure get close to his opponent. Jinji was very wary of Xiaoling Yu taking away Bao Bing's Dharma treasure. This risky attack did not go as he wished, and his Dharma treasure was taken away by his opponent. How could Jinji not be depressed? At this point in the battle, Xiaoling Yu's divine sense had already drawn in the might of heaven and earth. The lightning that was wreaking havoc in the ring had already been dispersed. Without waiting for Xiaoling Yu to set up the soul-sealing array, Jinji had already cupped his fists and said, "Xiao Dao Yu, good move." Jinji admits defeat. Jinji could already feel a strong murderous intent from Xiaoling Yu. Now that his saber had been taken away, he could no longer use his powerful saber techniques. If he continued to fight, he was really worried that Xiaoling Yu would kill him. Xiaoling Yu's expression was originally a little gloomy, even sinister. However, Jinji tactfully admitted defeat. His expression returned to normal, but it was still a little pale. After the referee announced that he had won, Xiaolingyu walked down the ring without any joy or worry, just like how he had won the previous battle. As for the saber, it was unceremoniously put away by Xiaolingyu, just like Bao Bing's spikes. After the battle, Bao Bing did not dare to ask Xiaolingyu for his Dharma treasure. It was the same for Bao Bing. In particular, Xiaolingyu was currently bathed in blood, but his footsteps were steady. This made Jinji feel that it was better to stay as far away from this person as possible, never to have any interaction with him again. Even the woman who had been trying to curry favor with Xiaolingyu did not dare to utter a single word, even though she was quietly following behind him. After returning to the secret chamber and entering the quiet room, Xiaolingyu entered the chaos spectrum. Currently, he was severely injured. Only in the chaos spectrum would he have enough time to completely recover before the third round of the competition. Many people thought that although Xiaolingyu had reached the third round, his abilities would definitely be weakened by a lot with his heavily injured body. It was very likely that he would stop in the third round. Meanwhile, the top powerhouses on Goat Horn Peak, the Shaman King, Saber 9, Peacock Bright Monarch, Tianliang, and other cultivators who had interacted with Xiaolingyu before, were all secretly surprised. That fellow's progress is too fast. From tomorrow onwards, there would be 3 watches every day for the remaining 10 days of this month. Chapter 741. Although the injury seemed serious, it was only a physical injury. To put it bluntly, it was a cut in his stomach. After the first round of the competition, there would be 5 years to recuperate, but after the second round, there would be 10 years. Xiaolingyu had been in the chaotic spectrum all this time, so he had 100,000 years to recuperate. Before he fought with the master of heaven-reaching realm in the market, Xiaolingyu was prepared to get injured. Naturally, he had prepared a lot of healing elixirs and top-grade medicinal herbs. In order to be fully prepared, Xiaolingyu even spent a large sum of psychic divine stones to purchase 2 celestial elixirs. One was used to heal the body, and the other was used to heal the soul. However, there was no need to waste the celestial elixir on his current injury. Xiaolingyu only used the body transformation technique to slowly recuperate. Anyway, there was still a lot of time. After more than 10,000 years in the chaotic spectrum, Xiaolingyu's injury had already healed. He used the remaining time to continue studying the soul confining array. Although he did not use the soul confining array in the fight with Jinji, Xiaolingyu had to put more effort into treating his weakness. And Jinji's performance also made Xiaolingyu realize that even if those top experts did not participate in the competition, it would not be easy for him to get into the top 10 of the Master of Heaven-Reaching Realm. To Xiaolingyu's surprise, before the third round of the competition arrived, 2 old acquaintances came to find him. The first to come was Shun Gongbao. He also participated in the competition and had successfully advanced to the third round. Brother Zhao's injury should be fine now, right? Shun Gongbao asked with seeming concern. It's nothing serious. After Xiaolingyu replied, he narrowed his eyes and said, Fellow Taoist Shun, your cultivation seems to have improved a lot. Could it be that you have encountered an opportunity? Shun Gongbao smiled and said, It's not an opportunity. I just received a token of appreciation from the Sacred Army. Xiaolingyu frowned slightly. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly said, Fellow Taoist Shun, could it be that, at this point, Xiaolingyu stopped and looked at the door? At this moment, the woman who had been ordered to serve Xiaolingyu was standing outside the door. The Sacred Army had a rule for this tournament. During the tournament, although the participating cultivators could meet each other, there had to be a third party present to prevent collusion. Therefore, even if they were old friends, the door to the secret chamber had to be open. Shun Gongbao was so shrewd that he naturally understood what Xiaolingyu meant. He said, It's a waste not to take the benefits that come to our door. That little girl is clean, and her cultivation is at the peak of the late stage of Holy God. After having sex with her once, she directly advanced to the reaching heaven realm. Xiaolingyu first shook his head, then smiled and said, I advanced to the heaven ascension stage after dual cultivating with you once. I reckon that you were also a virgin before dual cultivating, right? Shen Gongbao looked a little embarrassed. He was indeed a virgin before, but after a while he explained, "It's not that there are no beautiful women who admire me, but I have a high standard. Ordinary women can't enter my eyes at all. Besides, a cultivator's virginity is very precious and can't be broken easily. It should be used at a critical moment." Shaolin Yu directly ignored the first half of Shen Gongbao's words, but the second half was somewhat reasonable. However, how many ordinary cultivators could endure from the beginning of cultivation to the reaching heaven realm? Although it was said that it should be used at a critical moment, there were too many critical moments for cultivators to cultivate. Not to mention other things, every breakthrough of cultivation was very crucial. In my opinion, fellow Taoist, since you've lost your virginity, why don't you wait until you're about to ascend to the longevity realm and find a virgin in the heavenly ascension realm to dual cultivate? Shaolin Yu followed. Shen Gongbao originally planned to do so. However, there were very few women in the reaching heaven realm, and few of them were virgins. Even if there were such women, they might not be interested in him. Secondly, before the competition, King Ming had told him that he must advance to the top 10 and wash himself in the Cheongqi pool. In addition, the Sacred Army had given him a clean and beautiful woman for free, and he could not resist the temptation of the girl, so he used his virginity advantage. Even if you use it when you're close to the longevity realm, it can only be a little beneficial. That abnormal longevity tribulation is not something that can be passed by just one dual cultivation. Even my senior brother Jiang, who has a profound realm, is not 100% sure that he can pass the longevity tribulation with the holy whip. Shen Gongbao waved his hand dismissively and then said, "By the way, my senior brother also participated in this competition. He won the first 2 rounds easily, and he didn't use the holy whip. He must be one of the top 10. The power of the holy whip is something that even the top masters are afraid of." After washing himself this time, his success rate of passing the longevity tribulation should be 10% or 20% higher. How many reaching heaven realm masters from the earth are participating in the competition? Shaolin Yu asked. Not many. There should only be a dozen or so, and a few have been eliminated. There are probably only 5 or 6 who can make it to the final mixed battle. After Shen Gongbao replied, he transmitted his voice. "I came here this time to inform you. When a mixed battle begins, we have to team up, because even if we don't team up, others will. As the saying goes, we are outnumbered. We have to be prepared early." Shaolin Yu nodded. Although he did not trust Shen Gongbao very much, he felt that this might be the Mahami Yuri's idea. "Then I won't disturb Xiao Dao Yu any further. I'll take my leave." Shen Gongbao did not dawdle and immediately took his leave. When he walked to the door, he glanced at the woman, then turned back and said, "Brother Xiao, you should enjoy yourself when you need to. Don't think too much. It would be foolish to waste the Sacred Army's good intentions. This girl looks much more beautiful than mine." Shaolin Yu just smiled and did not reply. He knew that Shen Gongbao was a greedy cultivator, and he was greedy to the point of being unscrupulous. He was not afraid of offending other masters because of his greed. Although Shen Gongbao was sometimes hateful, he was a straightforward and carefree person. Of course, he had a powerful master after all, and he also had the support of Earth's masters. As long as he did not go too far, no one would care too much about him. Shen Gongbao's words before he left made the woman look at Shaolin Yu tenderly, as if she wanted to melt Shaolin Yu's steel-like resistance. "My injuries have not completely healed. It's inconvenient. It's inconvenient." Shaolin Yu dejectedly went into the quiet room that he had set up with layers of restrictions and then hid in the chaotic spectrum to cultivate. Shen Gongbao could accept the Sacred Army's affection and did not mind practicing dual cultivation with a girl, but Shaolin Yu could not. Otherwise, Miao Ying and Qing Xian in the chaotic spectrum would definitely skin him alive. Moreover, Shaolin Yu was not a virgin. It would not be very beneficial for him to practice dual cultivation with a girl whose cultivation was similar to his, let alone a girl whose cultivation was much lower than his. Through dual cultivation, Xiao Lingyu could improve his strength by a lot, unless the girl was a virgin in the heavenly ascension realm, or her cultivation was much higher than Xiao Lingyu's. Of course, it would be better if she was a virgin whose cultivation was much higher than Xiao Lingyu's. After Shen Gongbao left, less than a year had passed in the outside world, and another old friend came to visit. It was Qiyu. Although they had only met once in the dorsal fin clan in the realm of the gods, Xiao Lingyu was indebted to Qiyu for giving him pointers and giving him pills. This time, Xiao Lingyu naturally received him very warmly. "Junior greets Senior Qiyu," Xiao Lingyu said very politely and respectfully. "There's no need to be so formal. Now that you are also a heavenly ascension realm master, and you have extraordinary strength, we can address each other as equals." Qiyu put one hand on Xiao Lingyu's shoulder and looked very straightforward and generous. Then, he praised, "Brother Xiao is really a rare genius. In such a short time, you have already reached your current realm. If those so-called top masters who are usually arrogant knew about your progress, they would probably be so ashamed that they would find a mouse hole to hide in." The two of them sat in the living room, and Qiyu continued, "Brother, I've watched your first two matches. In the first match, you fought well, but in the second match, you were just passable." Xiao Lingyu said sincerely, "Senior, Big Brother Qiyu, please give me some pointers." To be honest, although he had gone through quite a lot of trials and tribulations to get to where he was today and had reached the heaven-reaching realm, almost reaching the peak of the god realm, Xiao Lingyu still felt a little proud to be able to call a legendary figure from Earth his brother. Compared with Shen Gongbao, Qiyu was less scheming and more frank. He said, "When you encounter an opponent like Jin Ji who attacks from the beginning, what you need to do is not to blindly defend and wait for him to exhaust his strength, but to fight him with strong attacks. If you only defend, you will be injured even if you can defend until the end. However, the opponent can directly admit defeat when he sees that the situation is not good and will not be injured at all. In this way, you will be at a disadvantage. If the opponent attacks head-on, you will not be able to hold on until the end, and you will be defeated before you can even display your skills." Xiao Lingyu nodded when he heard that. It was not that he did not have the means to attack his opponent, but he did not want to expose them too early. For example, his heavenly eye of destruction and the suicide dagger were both very destructive. Qiyu continued, "I think that even if you reserve your strength, it is built on the premise that you will not be injured, especially in this kind of arena battle where there is very little time to rest. Defeating your opponent with the smallest price is the right way to go. Many times, some experts will be at a disadvantage or even die in a battle because they want to reserve their strength and underestimate their opponent. We cannot be so careless, especially in a battle between experts like this. Brother, you're also a cultivator from Earth. Even if you reveal some treasure that others covet in the battle, who would dare to come looking for trouble with you? Even if they come looking for trouble, we are not people who are afraid of trouble." Xiao Lingyu felt that Qiyu's words were somewhat reasonable. For example, in the battle with Jin Ji, if it were not for his chaotic divine infant's powerful defense, it was very likely that he would have been killed in the arena. If that happened, it would be too late to regret that he did not use his full strength. Chapter 742. In the third round of the competition, Xiao Lingyu's opponent was equally strong. He had already stepped into the peak of the Ascension late stage. However, compared to those top powerhouses who were half a step into the Immortality realm and had already touched the mysteries of the Immortality realm, ordinary Ascension late stage cultivators were still weak. However, Xiao Lingyu was not a top powerhouse after all. The Ascension late-stage powerhouse was much stronger than him in terms of realm. The difference in realm was directly reflected in the momentum and the speed and range of the power of heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, an Ascension late-stage cultivator had no hope of winning against an Ascension late-stage powerhouse. "I'm Xingbang. Please enlighten me," Xiao Daoyu. "Xiao Lingyu. Please enlighten me." Both sides cupped their fists and bowed. The bell for the start of the competition sounded. Xingbang had also seen Xiao Lingyu's previous battles, so he quickly attacked like Jin Ji and used the advantage of his realm to communicate with the power of heaven and earth in a short time to suppress Xiao Lingyu. Although Xiao Lingyu could also communicate with the power of heaven and earth quickly, not only was his speed far inferior to Xingbang's, but his power was also much weaker. However, after being reminded by Qi Yu, Xiao Lingyu was no longer as conservative as in the previous round. When Xingbang rushed over, he had already grasped the suicide dagger in his hand. As soon as the suicide dagger appeared in his hand, Xiao Lingyu's blood flowed uncontrollably into it. In an instant, nearly 30% of his blood and essence was absorbed by the suicide dagger. The suicide dagger also suddenly shone with a bloody light, and the mysterious patterns on the blade flowed rapidly. Waves of powerful aura gushed out from Xiao Lingyu's body. In an instant, it had already swept through the entire arena, causing the power of heaven and earth that Xingbang communicated with to collapse into nothingness. At this moment, Xingbang rushed in front of Xiao Lingyu, but when he felt the powerful power of the suicide dagger, his heart trembled violently, and he actually retreated in a flash. It was not that Xingbang was timid, but this battle was too important, and he had to be cautious. After retreating, Xingbang did not take the risk to attack again. He poured out his divine thought with all his might, drawing more and more mighty force of heaven and earth into the arena and constantly increasing his aura. Xiao Lingyu, on the other hand, used her wings of extreme speed to quickly move around the arena while communicating with nature. Xiao Lingyu took out the special materials for setting up the formation one by one and used the restrictions to conceal them. Xingbang had seen the power of the soul confinement formation and had asked Bao Bing about it after the first round of the competition. Therefore, as someone who valued Xiao Lingyu very much, he would not allow Xiao Lingyu to set up the soul confinement formation. Therefore, he did not continue to communicate with the natural forces of heaven and earth to increase his aura. With a wave of his hand, countless tiny golden needles whistled out like a storm. The golden needles that Xingbang released were all extremely sharp. They were also strengthened by the power of heaven and earth. They were much stronger than Jin Ji's 10,000 Thunder Slash. The thunder blade of Jin Ji's 10,000 Thunder Slash could easily break through Xiao Lingyu's defense, let alone Xingbang's golden needles. If she took them head-on, even if she could set up the soul confinement formation, Xiao Lingyu would still be pierced by countless golden needles. At the very least, she would be seriously injured. At the critical moment, Xiao Lingyu remembered Qi Yu's warning again. Therefore, without thinking, she directly hid in the chaos spectrum. Such a sudden and strange disappearance on the arena would definitely make many spectators curious and surprised. It would also attract the attention of the top experts on the Goat Horn Peak. However, it was no secret that she could hide herself. It was no big deal even if everyone knew. It was better than risking her life to take on these golden needles head-on. When the golden needles swept past her position, Xiao Lingyu immediately came out of the chaos spectrum and continued to set up the formation. By hiding in the chaos spectrum once, Xiao Lingyu had already set up the soul confinement formation. After all, she was almost done setting it up previously. However, Xingbang, who was unwilling to give up, also changed. Just as Xiao Lingyu's soul confinement formation was activated and before the rolling fog enveloped the entire arena, those golden needles suddenly disappeared into thin air. Then, they appeared within 100 feet of Xiao Lingyu at the same time. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu was surrounded by countless golden needles. Those golden needles almost formed a golden eggshell around him. Before Xiao Lingyu could hide in the chaos spectrum again, those golden needles had already pierced through the shield formed by his chaotic primordial fire and chaotic divine power. Then, their power was slightly reduced as they pierced various parts of his body. Xiao Lingyu felt a huge headache. He did not even have the time to use the jade piece from the beginning when he was fighting with an exceedingly powerful expert. He could not use the faint golden light shield to protect himself. However, the defensive power of the faint golden light shield was about the same as his body. Even if he used it, it would not be of much use. At the same time, he felt a piercing pain all over his body. Moreover, there was a special energy that seeped into his body and paralyzed his entire body. Fortunately, Xiaoling Yu's body was of high quality and had a stronger resistance to that special energy. In addition to the burning of the chaotic primordial fire, the numbness soon began to weaken. However, this short period of paralysis was enough for Xingbang to charge forward and attack once. After Xiaoling Yu recovered slightly, he waved his hand and let the life-severing dagger slash out a ray of chaotic sword light. Xingbang, who had a higher cultivation level, thought that he could dodge the sword light. However, before the sword light arrived, the left side of his body was already in excruciating pain. In the eyes of the audience, Xingbang's body had already been divided into two parts. One part continued to charge forward, while the other part suddenly stopped. Fresh blood spurted out in the next moment. Although Xingbang had used half of his body to complete this attack due to his extreme speed, it was a pity that when his attack landed on Xiaoling Yu's body, it seemed a little weak and powerless. After all, half of his body had been separated, which greatly affected his attack. Xiaoling Yu was hit by the palm. As the numbness in his body had not completely disappeared, he took a few steps back. However, Xingbang only let out a scream after the attack was completed. His body was severely injured, so naturally, he could not use his skills smoothly. Even though he tried his best to communicate with nature, his divine will could not penetrate the soul-sealing array. Xiaoling Yu shouted softly. The chaotic primordial fire and chaotic divine power in his body surged together and forced out all the golden needles that had pierced into his body. The special energy released by the golden needles was not weak. However, Xiaoling Yu's body was originally extremely poisonous, so he had a strong resistance to poison. In addition to the chaotic primordial fire's resistance, the poison was not able to do anything to Xiaoling Yu. When Xiaoling Yu walked towards Xingbang, Xingbang could not hide the fear on his face. He waved his hand and said, "I admit defeat. I admit defeat." Xiaoling Yu looked at the referee and waited for the referee to announce his victory before he left the stage. "Bright King, I heard that you have some friendship with Xiaoling Yu. Is the rumor true?" On the top of the Goat Horn Peak, the Honorable 10,000 Saints in golden armor asked the Bright Peacock Monarch. "He's a junior of my lineage from Earth. He just arrived at heaven-reaching Saint Island not long ago," the Bright Peacock Monarch said with a casual and natural expression. The Honorable 10,000 Saints frowned slightly and said, "He once obstructed the Sacred Army's experts from carrying out a mission in the lower world. He's at most an immortal venerable or a demon venerable in the lower world. If he can obstruct the Sacred Army's experts at this level, then the Sacred Army's experts are a bit disappointing," the Bright Peacock Monarch said indifferently. "This brat ruined one of my plans earlier," the Shaman King in the red robe scoffed. "But I heard that it was the Shaman King who abducted him from the Demon Sealing Tower first. Why? Is the Shaman King at a disadvantage in front of a junior?" The Bright Peacock Monarch asked with a smile. "Oomph." The Shaman King scoffed again and did not reply. "This brat killed my disciple in the narrow god realm." Saber 9 chimed in as well. "Why? All of you seem to have a deep grudge against him. He's just a junior. How could he have offended all of you? It seems like I know too little about him. A genius like him should be nurtured well." "Huh," the Bright Peacock Monarch said with a smile. "This brat's cultivation speed is extremely fast. He's considered a rare genius. He'll definitely reach the top in the god realm sooner or later." Although the Son of Heaven, who had been calm and expressionless all this while, still had his eyes closed as if he did not care about what was happening, he still made a judgment. Apart from the Bright Peacock Monarch, the other top powerhouses of Tongtian Holy Island frowned slightly when they heard what the Son of Heaven said. There have been countless rare geniuses in the history of the God Realm, but very few can truly reach the top. It's easy for geniuses to show up, but those who do show up easily die young, the Lord of all Saints said with narrowed eyes. "This brat is too powerful and likes to get into trouble. "He might not last long," Saber 9 said, while stroking his beard. "He better not fall into my hands. Otherwise, I'll kill him even if all of you from Earth come after me," the Shaman King said with a clear attitude. At that moment, Shaolin Yu had returned to his quiet room and entered the chaos spectrum. From the third round to the final battle, there was a total of 50 years of recuperation. To Shaolin Yu, it was 500,000 years. Shaolin Yu was not seriously injured this time, but there were residual toxins in his body. Fortunately, the chaos primordial fire was extremely powerful and could refine the toxins. Only 20,000 years had passed in the chaos spectrum, and Shaolin Yu had completely recovered. He could not help but secretly rejoice that he had the chaos spectrum. Otherwise, he would have to drag his severely injured body to participate in the third round. Even if he could defeat Xing Bang, his injuries would definitely be more serious. When it came to the battle royale, he would be lucky to have half of his combat strength left. In the next 480,000 years, apart from Shen Gongbao, no other cultivators came to disturb him. Shaolin Yu had made great progress in the soul-sealing formation, and he had also fully comprehended a few other formations. Shaolin Yu's current cultivation level was not low. He could already thoroughly study many of the Liao Zhou's inheritance's forbidden formation methods, and he finally understood how powerful Liao Zhou was. Everything else aside, Shaolin Yu felt that as long as he fully comprehended Liao Zhou's inheritance, he would be able to reach the top in the God realm and not be afraid of those top powerhouses. Chapter 743. The Battle Royale Arena was not at the foot of the Goathorn Peak. Instead, it was in a huge valley millions of kilometers away from the Sacred Mountain. Rather than calling it a valley, it was more like a huge basin. A valley that spanned no less than 50,000 kilometers was hard to find even in the Divine Realm. This valley was surrounded by tall mountains on all sides. The forest was verdant and poisonous miasma wreaked havoc. It was a place where some extremely poisonous creatures grew and cultivated. The trees and flowers in the valley were poisonous. The poisonous miasma was released by the trees in the valley. After accumulating for many years, this place had become a dangerous place for ordinary cultivators and demonic beasts. Let alone sacred deities and god emperors. Even ordinary transcending heavens experts would have a headache if they entered this place. If they were not careful, their cultivation would be destroyed if they were lucky. In the worst-case scenario, they would die here. Using such a dangerous place as the arena for the free-for-all battle could be considered a test for everyone. However, cultivators who were able to make it to the free-for-all battle at the Heavenly Ascension Realm were not easy to deal with. The environment of this valley did not affect them too much. Other than Shaolin Yu, Qi Yu, Shen Gongbao, and Jiang Shang, there were two other cultivators from the Earth lineage who had the qualifications to enter the Battle Royale. They were called Qi Jingzi and a tower-bearing Arhut, who held a 7-story pagoda. They were mythical figures that Shaolin Yu had heard of on Earth. Although everyone entered the valley one after another, they quickly gathered together. Almost all the heaven-reaching experts who entered the Battle Royale had found their own teams. After they entered the valley, they were like Shaolin Yu and the other Earth experts. They were not in a hurry to find opponents. Instead, they went to find their teammates. Of course, there were also those who did not move alone. These cultivators were either extremely confident in their own strength or were not good at socializing and were very wary of other cultivators. Shaolin Yu was actually thinking that since his ability to conceal himself had been exposed, he could just hide in the primal chaos spectrum and wait until there were only 10 cultivators left in the valley before he came out. Then, he would take the initiative to leave the valley and obtain a chance to enter the Jade Pool to wash his body. But he couldn't do that now. He had to help these fellow countrymen from Earth. He couldn't stay out of this alone. If he cowered and hid, even if he obtained the opportunity to enter the Jasper Pool to wash his body, not only would he be despised by others, the masters on Earth would also look down on him. In the future, they would not provide any help to him, let alone protect him. He would also feel guilty for the guidance and help that King Ming and Jiang Shang had already given him. Furthermore, Xiao Lingyu had no reason to hide from battle. That was not his character. There was no time limit for the battle royale, but it couldn't be dragged on indefinitely because no one could stay in the valley for too long. Although everyone could ignore the poisonous miasma in the valley for a short period of time, after a long time, the poisonous miasma would definitely corrode their bodies. Furthermore, being in the valley, in order to resist the corrosion of the poisonous miasma, everyone's cultivation would be consumed very quickly. Ending the battle as quickly as possible was the best choice for all the cultivators. Dragging it out would do no one any good. After the teams were organized, the real battle royale finally began. There were 40 divine master powerhouses who entered the valley, and 6 cultivators from Earth gathered together. They could be considered a strong team. At first, when they encountered other teams, they did not directly pounce on them to fight. Instead, they silently retreated and looked for other targets to clean up. Everyone had a tacit understanding of first being easy and then being difficult. It was the same for the 6 powerhouses from Earth. They only fought with teams that had fewer people than them. Those cultivators who moved in 2s and 3s or acted alone naturally became their targets. First, 3 cultivators who acted alone were chased out. Then, those cultivators who acted alone or in smaller teams began to take the initiative to seek refuge with the larger teams, or they formed a new large team together. No matter how strong an individual's strength was, as long as they were not at the level of a top powerhouse, it was impossible for them to defeat a team formed by several divine master powerhouses. No one was an exception. After all, the divine master powerhouses who entered the valley were all remarkable and could be considered the top powerhouses among the divine master powerhouses. In less than a day, the cultivators who remained in the valley all formed their own teams. At the moment, there were still 30 cultivators in the valley. Other than Xiao Lingyu and the other 6 powerhouses from Earth, the other 24 cultivators formed 3 teams, and each team was made up of 8 cultivators. As a result, the 6 cultivators from Earth became the weakest among the 4 teams. At least, that was the case in terms of numbers. This situation was also within everyone's expectations. Otherwise, they would not have secretly communicated with each other early on. If they did not stick together, Xiao Lingyu could only hide in the chaotic spectrum in the face of such a situation. Even if Jiang Shang used the Holy Whip, he would probably only end up being swept out. The cultivators from Earth were too strong in the past. They have always been the overlords of heaven-reaching Sacred Island, which made the other cultivators here very jealous. Now that the powerhouses from Earth have ascended one after another, and there are not many newcomers to replace them, the strength of the Earth on heaven-reaching Sacred Island is getting weaker and weaker. Many cultivators are ready to vent their past hatred on us. In order to avoid being attacked by the other 3 teams, we can't stay in one place for too long. We have to move quickly and let the other 3 teams fight first, Jiang Shang said calmly. Even if we only encounter one of the teams, if we can't win quickly, we have to retreat immediately. Once we're entangled, it's very likely that we'll be besieged. Shun Gongbao stroked the tuft of beard on his chin as if he was very wise. If we really fight, there's nothing to fear from any of their teams. However, if we face 2 or even 3 teams at the same time, it's indeed too troublesome. Even Qi Yu, who had a straightforward personality and did not like to dawdle, had a very serious expression. As for Qi Jingzi and To Tarahan, they did not like to talk and did not express any opinions. According to Jiang Shang, although the 6 powerhouses from Earth had always been gathered together, they rarely attacked the other 3 teams. As long as they discovered other teams approaching, they would immediately dodge to the side. Just as Jiang Shang had said, the cultivators from the other 3 teams did not have a good impression of the cultivators from Earth. What they wanted the most was to clear out the team from Earth first. However, after all, the 3 teams were not united. Even the 8 cultivators in each team were not united. They did not want to fight to the death with the team from Earth first. The 4 teams appeared to be very careful. However, other than the team from Earth, the other 3 teams gradually began to fight as they often encountered each other. At first, they were just probing each other. Gradually, they became angry and the battle became more and more intense. However, two of the three teams soon had a tacit understanding. They suddenly joined forces and attacked another team with 8 cultivators from heaven-reaching realm. With twice the number advantage, the two teams that joined forces naturally had the absolute upper hand. I think we should go over and help. Otherwise, if that team is cleared out, they will join forces to deal with us next, Shun Gongbao said. If we go over and help now, they might suddenly stop and join forces to deal with us, Jiang Shang said as he shook his head. It's not maybe. It should be definitely, Qiyu said. Shun Gongbao shrugged and did not say anything else. After an hour, the team could not hold on any longer. The 8 heaven-reaching realm experts in the team left the valley one after another. No one would fight to the death in this kind of competition. After all, it was just a competition. There was no deep hatred between them. Of the two teams that won, only one cultivator left the valley because he was too injured. The two teams still had 15 experts. We can't wait any longer. If we wait for them to recover, we will have no chance of winning. Jiang Shang narrowed his eyes. Before they clear us out, they will definitely not split up. Right now, we can only fight. Qiyu nodded in agreement. Even though they have just experienced a series of battles and have consumed a lot of energy, they still have a great advantage. I'm afraid we won't be able to achieve a complete victory. There will definitely be people who will be cleared out. Shun Gongbao said worriedly. Haha, things are always like this. How can we let everyone have their way? Qi Jingzi laughed. Let's do it. After Jiang Shang took a deep breath, a long whip appeared in his hand. The long whip was completely black, and its segments were interlocked. It looked very heavy, and it should be the legendary deity striking whip. Xiaoling Yu also took out his life-severing dagger. The primal chaos, primordial fire, and primal chaos, divine power, formed a shield together. The jade piece also projected a faint golden light screen above his head to protect his entire body. The rest of the earth cultivators did the same. They first prepared their own defenses. When Jiang Shang moved, everyone followed and charged toward the 15 experts who had joined forces. 6 against 15. The difference in numbers was huge. However, the difference in realms between each cultivator was not very big. The cultivators of the earth lineage were like eggs hitting a rock. The 15 cultivators did not panic at all when they saw the 6 cultivators from Earth rushing over. They quickly lined up and then waited for Xiaoling Yu and the others in a half-moon formation. If they continued to charge forward, they would plunge into the half-moon formation and then be surrounded. Charge over and don't stop. Break through their formation directly, then turn around and charge back. After a few times, they will definitely be in a mess. You guys are in charge of defense. Brother Xiao and I will be in charge of attacking. Jiang Shang instructed loudly. The god's striking whip in his hand had already begun to tremble. Xiaoling Yu accelerated forward and walked side by side with Jiang Shang. 30% of the blood and essence in his body had been absorbed by the life-severing dagger. The 15 cultivators on the other side seemed to have experts coordinating. When they saw that the 6 cultivators from Earth were approaching, they attacked at the same time while retreating. As a result, the pressure on the cultivators from Earth increased. However, everyone had to forcefully withstand the other party's attacks and charge over. If they attacked each other, they would not be able to raise their heads. Although the distance was constantly closing, the other party's speed was not very slow. If this continued, they would probably be beaten to the point of being unable to turn back by the time they broke through the other party's formation. Everyone, don't hold back anymore. Charge with me. Chapter 744. Xiaoling Yu was at the front of the team in an instant. Jiang Shang and Qiyu followed closely behind, while Shun Gongbao, Qi Jingzi, and Toda Arhut were at the back. The 6 powerhouses from Earth charged in a triangular formation. There were 3 people on each side, so the formation was relatively stable and had a strong penetrating power. Although there were many opponents, their strength was uneven. They could not completely move as one, so their overall mobility and movement speed were not very good. Huh. Aiming at a cultivator in front of him, Xiao Lingyu waved the life-ending dagger, and a chaotic blade aura whizzed out. Although the cultivator immediately used a divine spirit treasure shaped like an alms bowl to defend himself, the chaotic blade aura had already cut half of his body as soon as the magic treasure blocked in front of him. Immediately, blood splattered. His own defense was easily torn apart, and the cultivator immediately fell down. While sealing his wound, he retreated out of the valley. In this valley where the poisonous miasma raged, if one was seriously injured and did not leave quickly, the possibility of being corroded by the poisonous miasma was much higher. No one would take this risk. After all, the fierce battle was still ongoing. Even if they did not leave, when this battle was over, the injured would be the first to be cleaned out. A Heaven Ascension late-stage expert being injured so easily caused the cultivators on both sides of the expert to be incomparably shocked. When they saw Xiao Lingyu waving the life-severing dagger again, they immediately retreated without thinking. The 6 divine master powerhouses from Earth penetrated the enemy's front just like that. However, although the life-ending dagger caused the enemy to lose one, the 6 powerhouses from Earth also suffered more than a dozen attacks from the enemy when they penetrated the enemy's front. The dozen or so powerhouses on the other side all attacked with all their strength, so their attack power was naturally not weak. Only 5 of the 6 powerhouses from Earth were responsible for defense, and their joint defense was directly blasted apart by the enemy's attack. Fortunately, in this split second, both sides only had time to launch one attack. After the defense of the 6 powerhouses from Earth was broken, each of them only suffered some shock and did not suffer much damage. As soon as they penetrated the enemy's front and cut apart the enemy's formation, Jiang Shang and Xiao Lingyu switched positions. This time it's up to Jiang Shang. Without giving the enemy time to regroup, Jiang Shang roared, and then resolutely turned around and charged toward the enemy army on the left. It was also a triangular formation, but the cultivator in charge of attacking at the tip had changed. The cultivators on the other side might not be familiar with Xiao Lingyu, but almost all of them knew about Jiang Shang and the power of the Holy Whip. When Jiang Shang rushed over with the expert from Earth, the first few cultivators to bear the brunt of the attack directly collapsed. It seemed that no one dared to take the attack of the God-striking whip head-on. However, even if they did not wish to take it head-on, Jiang Shang still brandished the God-striking whip and smashed it toward one of the powerhouses. The God-beating whip suddenly expanded, and in an instant, it was like a mighty and thick iron pillar, ruthlessly smashing into the cultivator's head. Compared to the sudden and sharp attack of the life-severing dagger, the God-beating whip seemed to have a lot of momentum when it was launched. The moment the iron pillar that it had transformed into was formed, it erupted with a towering aura. Boundless power of heaven and earth surged crazily from all directions, directly sealing off a large area of the surrounding space, causing the cultivator's movement speed to drop too much. He was unable to dodge at all. The cultivator also took out a shield-like divine spirit treasure, defensive magic treasure, to block above his head. However, after the defensive magic treasure was hit by the God-beating whip, it directly split open from the middle. The God-beating whip carried the mighty power of heaven and earth, and its power was slightly reduced as it smashed into the void above the cultivator's head. Although it only smashed into the void, the pressure brought by the powerful nature of heaven and earth caused the cultivator's face to immediately turn pale. He first spat out a mouthful of blood, and then his body fell to the ground like a meteor. Another cultivator on the enemy's side was seriously injured and lost the ability to fight again. However, the number of opponents on the other side was more than twice that of the powerhouses on Earth. While the God-beating whip was unleashing its power, the other cultivators on the other side were not idle either. They once again launched an attack on the 6 powerhouses on Earth. However, they did not have a tacit understanding of each other. This time, the attacks came one after the other, and they did not form a joint attack. Even so, the 6 powerhouses on Earth were already surging with blood. Other than Xiao Lingyu and Qiyu, who had stronger bodies, they could not help but cough up a few mouthfuls of blood. "I'll do it this time." After passing through the opponent's broken formation, Chiyu volunteered to go to the front and took out the gourd-shaped divine spirit treasure that he had obtained from the dorsal fin clan. Once again, Chiyu's gourd-shaped magic treasure spat out 3 blue bubbles in succession. Although the 3 blue bubbles were not able to trap the 3 powerhouses on the other side, the sudden explosion of the bubbles still caused the opponent's formation to be even more damaged. However, this time, the opponent finally changed their tactics. They no longer attacked the 6 powerhouses on Earth at the same time. Instead, they concentrated their firepower on Jiangshang's position. Obviously, in their opinion, Jiangshang's god-beating whip was the biggest threat to them. They wanted to get rid of Jiangshang first. Although Totarahin and Xiaolingyu, who were on the same side, helped to defend, the other side had 10 divine master powerhouses attacking together after all. They still violently broke through the defense on Jiangshang's side. However, Jiangshang had an extremely powerful master after all. Before his master ascended, he had naturally left behind a life-saving method for him. Just as those attacks were about to hit him and take his life, a circle of white light suddenly appeared around him. When the 10 attacks from the other side came into contact with the white light around Jiangshang's body, they were like white snow encountering a raging fire. They instantly melted into nothingness. Only then did Xiaolingyu see that there was a red string hanging around Jiangshang's neck. A wooden prayer bead was tied to the red string, and the white light curtain was emitted from the prayer bead. In fact, Shun Gongbao also had the same prayer bead, but Shun Gongbao tied it around his wrist. Relying on that prayer bead, everyone still did not suffer too much damage from the charge this time, while the other side's formation was completely messed up. Don't panic. Spread out and form an encirclement. The other side changed their tactics again. They first dodged far away, then formed a seemingly sparse encirclement. However, no matter where the 6 Earth powerhouses rushed, they would have to endure fierce bombardment from at least 3 directions. The cultivators who were attacked by them directly scattered to the sides, allowing them to charge out. The other side's formation could no longer be called a formation, but it was the best choice to deal with the Earth powerhouses who were too concentrated. If the Earth powerhouses continued to gather and charge like this, sooner or later, they would be defeated because of too much consumption. Should we find a place to defend? It's very disadvantageous to keep attacking. After all, we have too few people, Shun Gongbao said with a frown. It's precisely because we have fewer people that we have to attack. If we let them attack, we won't have the slightest chance to raise our heads. They will continue to suppress us until we are all seriously injured. Jiangshang shook his head and then said, "Now we can only act separately. Although it's very difficult to fight 1 against 2, we still have a chance." As soon as he finished speaking, Jiangshang took the lead and charged out of the team, randomly choosing a direction to rush in. Now, the other side still had 13 powerhouses, while the Earth powerhouses only had 6. Even if the other side fought 2 against 1, there would still be 1 more. Therefore, the other side was not afraid of the Earth powerhouses splitting up. The difference in their individual strength was not big, and the chances of winning were very small if they fought 1 against 2. They cooperated very well and also split up the team, fighting the enemy in pairs. As for the extra person, he naturally joined the ranks to deal with Jiangshang. After all, in their opinion, Jiangshang's strength was the strongest. The 2 people who were dealing with Xiaolingyu were not bad either. They were both at the peak of the late stage of the reaching heaven realm, and the quality of their magic weapons was not low. These 2 had long known that Xiaolingyu's realm was slightly lower, so they communicated with the mighty power of heaven and earth to suppress Xiaolingyu as soon as they came up. Although Xiaolingyu was suppressed as expected, as long as the other side attacked, he would immediately hide in the primal chaos spectrum, wait for the attack to end, and then come out and move his position. After many years of research, the speed at which he set up the soul-binding array had increased greatly. He only hid in the primal chaos spectrum 3 times, and the soul-binding array was set up properly. However, What everyone did not expect was that Qi Jingzi had already been defeated and escaped from the valley. Qi Jingzi's early defeat caused the other side's advantage in numbers to be widened again. As for the extra two people, one of them went to Qi Yu's side, while the other charged towards Xiao Lingyu's side. The situation was not good to begin with, and Qi Jingzi's defeat undoubtedly made things worse for the Earth powerhouses. However, Xiao Lingyu was not afraid. In the shroud of the soul-binding array, the other side's realm did not exist. Then, other than the advantage in numbers, the other side had no advantage in other aspects. However, those powerhouses already knew the power of the soul-binding array. They did not enter the range of the soul-binding array. Instead, they attacked from outside in an attempt to destroy the soul-binding array before fighting Xiao Lingyu. If they fought outside, any one of these three powerhouses would make Xiao Lingyu feel very troublesome. If the three of them joined forces, Xiao Lingyu had no chance of winning at all. Just as Xiao Lingyu was hesitating, Todorot-bearing Arhat was defeated and fled. As a result, the other side had two more powerhouses, and their advantage was greatly increased. What was even more despairing was that when Shun Gongbao saw that the situation was unfavorable, he wanted to hide in Xiao Lingyu's soul-binding array. However, as soon as he reached the edge of the soul-binding array, he was attacked by the three powerhouses guarding outside the soul-binding array. He also escaped with serious injuries. Earth's powerhouses had lost 3, but the other side still had 13. How could they continue fighting? There were more and more enemies outside the soul-binding array. It was useless for Xiao Lingyu to go out, so he could only hide in the soul-binding array. Jiangshang had no choice but to rely on his unbreakable white light screen defense to repeatedly use the deity striking whip, severely injuring 2 opponents in one go. Then, the white light screen disappeared, and he could only retreat from the valley with injuries. Chapter 745. When Jiangshang and Qiyu left, they only allowed 3 enemies to leave. There were still 10 enemies on the other side. Xiao Lingyu was alone, so he was even more powerless to face 10 strong enemies. However, to Xiao Lingyu's surprise, before the other side attacked, 2 cultivators suddenly joined forces to sneak attack another cultivator. The cultivator who was sneakily attacked was naturally severely injured and had no choice but to retreat from the valley. Now, there were only 10 cultivators in the valley, which meant that the top 10 had already been decided. Xiao Lingyu finally understood why the 2 cultivators sneakily attacked their comrade just now. They just wanted to ensure that they could enter the top 10. The cultivators who came here to participate in the competition were all here for the cleansing of the Jasper Pool. Now, all the cultivators in the valley were qualified to enter the Jasper Pool. Of course, this was an arena battle after all. Besides entering the Jasper Pool to wash one's body, the higher one's ranking was, the more generous the rewards one would be able to obtain. So even if there were only 10 cultivators in the gorge, the chaotic battle still had to continue. Since the basic goal had been achieved, the 9 cultivators felt much more relaxed. Xiao Lingyu became their first target. Firstly, Xiao Lingyu's strength was unquestionable. Secondly, Xiao Lingyu was an earth cultivator. The 9 cultivators surrounded the soul-sealing array. No matter which direction Xiao Lingyu tried to break out of the encirclement, he would be attacked by at least 3 strong cultivators. Xiao Lingyu's mission to participate in the Sacred Army's Great Arena could be considered completed. He had no intention of obtaining a better ranking, and the current situation was not optimistic. The soul-sealing array could not withstand the attacks of the 9 strong cultivators for a long time. Therefore, he resolutely rushed out of the soul-sealing array. At the risk of losing another 30% of his blood essence, Xiao Lingyu launched another attack with the life-severing dagger. He severely injured an opponent who was blocking his way and broke out of the encirclement. However, although he had rushed out as he wished, he was also attacked by the other strong cultivators. His body was already heavily injured. His clothes were tattered, and he was bleeding all over. Xiao Lingyu originally thought that since he was heavily injured and was about to escape from the valley, those powerhouses would let him go. After all, he clearly did not intend to fight with them for the top 3 positions. However, he never expected that while the other cultivators could easily leave after being injured, the remaining 8 cultivators would chase after him relentlessly. Xiao Yu, who was heavily injured, could not be faster than all of the 8 cultivators, even if he used the wings of extreme speed. Before he reached the edge of the Flying Dagger Valley, he was stopped by 3 extremely fast experts. Xiao Yu narrowed her eyes and asked, "Could it be that you want to kill us all?" The 3 powerhouses did not say anything. Instead, they quickly communicated with the power of nature and suppressed Xiao Yu. In an instant, Xiao Yu felt as if the space around her had solidified, and her strength had been greatly weakened. The 5 experts behind him also caught up, forming an encirclement with the 3 in front. The 8 divine master powerhouses attacked at the same time, and Xiao Yu's heart repeatedly warned him of danger. However, before the attacks arrived, Xiao Yu had already disappeared into thin air and hid in the chaotic spectrum, causing all the attacks to miss. Originally, Xiao Yu could have continued hiding in the chaotic spectrum until all the other strong cultivators lost their patience and fought with each other, but he really could not take this lying down. Previously, he had been attacked by so many divine master powerhouses together, causing him to be the only one left from the Earth lineage. This had already made him very angry and unwilling to accept it. However, these enemies were actually prepared to keep him here, and he could not even take the initiative to give up. This naturally provoked Xiao Yu's killing intent. Xiao Yu could guess that he had no enmity with these divine master powerhouses. The reason why they wanted to keep him here was firstly, because he was an earth cultivator, and secondly, they must have received some special treatment before they came in. In other words, there was a divine master powerhouse boss who did not want him to leave this valley alive. Xiao Yu had offended the Shaman King, Saber 9, and also the Sacred Army. However, Xiao Yu felt that the mastermind behind these divine master powerhouses' encirclement should be the Sacred Army's boss. After all, this was the Sacred Army's territory, and it was the Sacred Army's arena. Moreover, he had rejected the Sacred Army's good intentions before. Xiao Yu also suddenly understood why Shangongbao had accepted the female cultivator sent by the Sacred Army, and even advised him to do the same. I'm not someone you can bully as you please. The angry Xiao Yu immediately exited the chaotic spectrum, and then a destructive red light shot out from the vertical eye between his brows. Since he had advanced to the 9th transformation, his abilities had improved tremendously. Xiao Yu's Heavenly Eye of Destruction attack was faster and more powerful. Moreover, it would not deplete his skills all at once. The destructive red light locked onto one of the Immortal Ascension cultivators. Even though Xiao Yu's cultivation level was not as high as that Immortal Ascension cultivator's, he was still unable to evade the attack of the destructive red light. His head exploded in an instant, but the Divine Infant managed to escape. After activating the Heavenly Eye of Destruction, Xiao Yu immediately hid in the chaotic spectrum again. He originally had the chance to destroy the Divine Infant, but he did not want to take the attacks of the other 7 Divine Master Powerhouses head-on. After entering the chaotic spectrum, Xiao Yu rapidly absorbed the energy in the Divine Stone of Psychic to recover his skills and condition. The injuries all over his body limited Xiao Yu's recovery speed. He consumed the Divine Spirit Pill that healed the body to heal his injuries. The flow of time in the chaotic spectrum was 10,000 times faster than outside. More than a year had passed in the chaotic spectrum in the time it took to brew a cup of tea in the outside world. After Xiao Yu completely recovered, he appeared again, and another destructive red light shot out from between his brows. Another Divine Master Powerhouse was almost killed. The other party had just launched his attack when Xiao Yu disappeared. Another 10 minutes passed outside, and Xiao Yu suddenly appeared again. When the 3rd cultivator died, the remaining Divine Master Powerhouses realized the severity of the situation. They no longer surrounded the spot where Xiao Lingyu disappeared in a thin air, and all of them flew out of the valley in a panic. Originally, it was a chaotic battle to see who could last the longest in the valley. At this moment, the remaining cultivators were actually scrambling to escape out of the valley. Although the rewards for the top 3 were generous, and the orders of a certain big shot were important, they were not worth anything compared to their own lives. Xiao Lingyu wanted to kill off all of them, but he needed some time to recover. Thus, he had no choice but to let them leave. At any rate, he had seriously wounded 2 of them. He had even killed off one of them and scared off the remaining experts. Due to that, he had more or less vented out the frustration in his heart. However, in this way, Xiao Lingyu became the last cultivator to leave the valley, which meant that he was the champion of the Divine Master Realm in the arena. Xiao Lingyu did not expect this result before the battle, because he had thought that he would leave as long as there were only 10 cultivators left in the valley. Of course, many cultivators did not expect this result, including the top powerhouses. The peacock Bright Monarch, who was standing on top of the mountain at the edge of the valley, looked a little better. She regained her benevolent and solemn expression. However, the expressions of the other top-notch cultivators were much worse, especially the Lord of All Holies. He had already roped in the Divine Ascension cultivators with excellent aptitudes. Not only had one of them been killed, but there were also a few who managed to escape with their nascent souls. However, they were basically crippled, trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it, overreaching yourself and shooting yourself in the foot. The peacock Bright Monarch smiled and did not hide her sarcasm. The chaotic battle in the valley was clearly caused by a hidden force targeting the cultivators of the Earth lineage. This made the monarch very angry, but he was very satisfied and gratified by Xiao Lingyu's performance. Even a powerhouse with an extremely high realm like him couldn't help but flaunt his eloquence at this time. After the chaotic battle of the Divine Master Realm ended, it was the chaotic battle of the Divine Master Realm cultivators, but it was not in the same place. The result of the chaotic battle of the Divine Master Realm was not very important to everyone, but the scene was very chaotic and the battle was very intense. After all the battles ended, the rankings of the 2 realms had also been decided. This time, the Great Sacred Army Battle Arena naturally reached the last key stage, which was to redeem the rewards. Still at the Goat Horn Peak, there were still countless cultivators watching. The Sovereign of All Saints personally hosted the award ceremony, and the top powerhouses who were invited became the guests of honor. As the first place of the Divine Master Realm, Xiao Lingyu naturally received the most generous reward. In addition to entering the Jasper Pool to wash her body, she also received a high-quality divine spiritual treasure, a powerful auxiliary technique, and 50 million divine spiritual stones. The person who presented the award for Xiao Lingyu was not the peacock Bright Monarch, but the top powerhouse of the Sacred Army, known as the Sovereign of All Saints. After he handed all the rewards to Xiao Lingyu, he smiled and said, "Little Daoyu, you've done well. Congratulations, Xiao Daoyu. If Xiao Daoyu can join our Sacred Army, the losses of the Sacred Army in the chaotic battle will be negligible." In other words, if Xiao Lingyu was unwilling to join the Sacred Army, the losses of the Sacred Army in the chaotic battle would not be forgotten. Xiao Lingyu naturally understood the Sovereign of All Saints' meaning, but his expression did not change as he said, "I'm not capable enough to accept such praise." In front of countless cultivators, the Sovereign of All Saints naturally would not flip out. He nodded with a smile, then turned and left. After the award ceremony, all the cultivators who were qualified to enter the Jasper Pool to wash their bodies returned to the secret room they had temporarily stayed in. As soon as Xiao Lingyu entered her secret room, the peacock Bright Monarch brought Jiangshang and other powerhouses from Earth to congratulate her. The peacock Bright Monarch closed the door of the secret room in front of the woman who served Xiao Lingyu and then unceremoniously set up layers of restrictions in the secret room. The so-called rules were just decorations for top powerhouses. Even though she was near the sacred mountain, the peacock Bright Monarch was still fearless. After the restrictions were set up, everyone stopped congratulating her. Brother Xiao, you probably don't know why the Sacred Army organized this competition, right? You probably don't know why all the powerhouses of the Heavenly Saint Island are so concerned about this, right? The Peacock Bright Monarch asked Xiaoling Yu. Chapter 746. It's said to be a selection of elites from the island, but it's actually to lure everyone out and find a few unknown experts to form a new force. In fact, the rewards you'll receive, other than the cleansing at the Jasper Pool, are all contributions from us famous experts. The Peacock Bright Monarch paused for a moment before continuing. Heavenly Saint Island is about to face a major upheaval. The experts of Heavenly Saint Island must come out to fight in order to survive this crisis. Everyone knows that there are many experts and talented cultivators in Heavenly Saint Island. They usually cultivate in seclusion, so it's hard to draw them out without causing commotion. You've performed very well in the arena, so you're not far from the top. If you enter the Jasper Pool again, the gap between you and us so-called top experts won't be so big. You'll be qualified to lead a force. What is this legendary upheaval? Xiaoling Yu asked. The invasion of the fiends. The Peacock Bright Monarch said with certainty. An unstable space has appeared on the eastern sea of Tongtian. In the near future, a spatial passage will appear in that space. The otherworldly demons will invade our god realm through that passage, and their target is Tongtian Sacred Island. The black-armored race of the otherworldly world? Xiaoling Yu asked again. The Peacock Bright Monarch shook her head. The Black Shell tribe is nothing compared to the fiend world. Although they've invaded the god world time and time again, they don't dare to face the true experts on our side, let alone approach Heavenly Saint Island. The black-armored race's realm is not large, but the devil realm is different. They have a vast space that is not inferior to our god realm. They also have countless cultivators and heaven-piercing experts, as well as several races with extremely strong battle prowess. The most important thing is that the evil devil realm was formed much earlier than our god realm. Their cultivation system is much more mature than ours. After countless years of survival of the fittest, the races that they left behind are all extremely powerful. If it wasn't for the fact that many of our ancient experts hadn't ascended yet, we would have been colonized by the fiends during the last invasion. Is it because the fiend realm sensed the appearance of the fiend sealing tower, so they chose this time to invade? Xiaoling Yu speculated. I'm afraid only they know. Peacock smiled and said, no matter why they're here, Heavenly Saint Island is the core of the god world and must bear the brunt. We must do our best to resist. Last time, when the experts of the evil devil realm invaded, almost all of the experts were left behind by our ancestors. Even though many years have passed, they probably haven't recovered to their former level. This time, they probably won't be able to do as they wish. Our guess is that the evil demon race's main goal this time is to attack the Devil Sealing Tower. There must be something important sealed within the Devil Sealing Tower, or they might even have sealed their ancestors. Even if they are not well prepared, they will definitely attack without any regard for their own lives. When that time comes, the pressure on us will be enormous. Xiaoling Yu nodded and said nothing. Shun Gongbao, Jiang Shang, and the rest of the Earth powerhouses listened attentively. The Peacock Bright Monarch continued. Therefore, we must make as many preparations as we can in the limited time we have. Even if we can't kill all the Fiend Realm's experts like our ancestors did, we must at least be able to drive them back. It's very difficult to gather all the experts with just the top powerhouses we have. Moreover, there aren't many Heavenly Saint powerhouses who would be willing to submit to the Shaman King and Saber 9, who have eccentric temperaments. That's why we've decided to create a few more leaders and let them organize everyone. However, the Holy Army and a few of the major organizations of Heavenly Saint Island are using this battle to secretly recruit the elite powerhouses. It's very disappointing. Once the elite powerhouses are recruited, the organization formed by the elite powerhouses will naturally become their private army. Their wishful thinking is brilliant. After all, The major organizations like the Holy Army are deeply rooted. They've accumulated a lot of resources over the years. There are indeed many powerhouses who are willing to submit to them. I'm just worried that these major organizations won't fight with all their might in order to preserve their strength. It'll be very troublesome when the Fiend Realm invades, Jiang Shang interrupted. Let them do as they please. The Heavenly Realm and Heavenly Saint Island don't belong to Earth, Chiyu said impatiently. No matter what, we of the Earth lineage have to stick together tightly. Only in this way can we minimize our losses. With us top powerhouses supervising, they won't have to worry about not contributing when the time comes. In reality, they don't want Heavenly Saint Island to be conquered more than we do. If that happens, the massive organization they've worked so hard to build and the massive resources they've accumulated over the years will be taken over by the Fiend Realm. They might even fight harder than we do, the Peacock Bright Monarch said optimistically. Brother Xiao, now that you've won first place in the arena battle, can you also form a new organization? Chiyu asked. Of course you can. Moreover, we so-called top powerhouses have already communicated that any cultivator who's in the top 10 of the Heavenly Ascension Realm Arena Battle can form a new organization. We can't interfere and even have to provide as much help as possible. The Peacock Bright Monarch nodded and continued, I originally thought that Jiangshang would be the one who's in the top 10 from Earth, but I didn't expect them to join forces to suppress us, causing Jiangshang to be eliminated prematurely. Fortunately, Brother Xiao won first place and is now very famous. He can also form a new organization on behalf of Jiangshang. Now that Earth is weak, we still have to bear the grudges left behind by our ancestors. We have to expand our strength as much as possible. In the past, if we wanted to form a major organization and recruit some powerhouses, we would be obstructed by other parties. This is also an opportunity for us, so we have to treat it seriously. On the Heavenly Ascension Holy Island, Earth is considered a powerful organization. If we have another organization to cooperate with us, even if we suffer some losses in resisting the invasion of the demons, we won't be looked down upon or besieged by other parties after the war. We'll still have the strength to stand on the Heavenly Ascension Holy Island. At this point, the Peacock Bright Monarch stopped. He stared at Xiao Lingyu and suddenly asked, Brother Xiao, are you willing to do your part for Earth? Xiao Lingyu cupped his fists and said, It's my duty to do so. When you're gathering your troops, Earth's cultivators will do our best to help. As for the management in the future, I'll have to trouble you. It's not good for us to interfere too much. We can't let your troops think that they're following Earth and not you. After a few more words, the Peacock Bright Monarch left with the powerhouses of Earth. After resting for an entire year, the female cultivator guarding the door informed Xiao Lingyu that it was time for him to go to the Jade Pool of the Sacred Mountain to wash his body. During this year, Xiao Lingyu carefully recalled his many years of experience. He realized that he seemed to be forever inseparable from the Earth lineage. The cultivation world had never done anything for the Earthlings. However, the cultivation world was the lowest level of the cultivation world, and there were no cultivators before the end of the world. There were no cultivators from the Earthlings in the cultivation world. However, when Xiao Lingyu arrived at the immortal world, he began to encounter cultivators from Earth and even established the powerful Huam Men organization for Earth. It was the same in the immortal world. He had just arrived at the Heavenly Ascension Holy Island and found many powerhouses from Earth, but he still had to contribute to Earth. It was as if this had become a mission that he couldn't avoid, and it was already destined. Xiao Lingyu couldn't help but wonder why he was the only one who appeared next to the ancient god's cave, when so many people were moved to the immortal world during the end of the world. Why was he the only one who could achieve what could be called brilliant achievements? Could it be that this is all planned by some hidden force or character? Am I just a pawn being used? It shouldn't be. Maybe it's just a coincidence. If it was planned, how meticulous would it be? I've been through so many dangers. As long as there's any accident, I'll die immediately. No one can calculate everything, right? As he approached the sacred mountain, Xiaoling Yu suddenly shook his head and threw away the distracting thoughts in his mind. The top powerhouses were all at the foot of the sacred mountain, as well as the top 10 cultivators in the sacred god and heavenly ascension realm arena battles. Seeing that everyone had arrived, the honorable 10,000 holies, who looked extraordinarily mighty in his golden armor, took out a magic treasure that looked like a blanket and invited everyone to fly onto it. Then, under the control of the honorable 10,000 holies, the blanket began to slowly rise towards the peak of the sacred mountain. To Xiaoling Yu's surprise, the sacred mountain was even higher than he had imagined. Even though the blanket flew past the clouds, everyone still couldn't see the peak of the sacred mountain when they looked up. The sacred mountain gave Xiaoling Yu the feeling that it towered into the depths of the immortal world's starry sky, connecting with the heavens. The heavenly ascension island was the same as the other places in the immortal world. The higher one went, the greater the spatial pressure. Even the top powerhouses didn't dare to say that they could fly into the starry sky. The blanket rose for nearly 4 hours before it stopped. At this time, everyone finally saw the peak of the sacred mountain. However, the spatial pressure here was something that even the average heavenly divine stage being would find difficult to withstand for long. If it weren't for the light being released by the blanket, those Holy Spirit cultivators would have most likely already been crushed to death. Xiaoling Yu made a rough estimate. The sacred mountain should be no less than 1,000,000 feet tall. This was the first time Xiaoling Yu had seen such a tall mountain in his life. The sacred mountain's peak was circular, less than 20 feet in diameter. It was completely made of pure white stones, and the jade pool was a small square pool at the center of the circular peak. Overall, the sacred mountain's peak looked like a copper coin, round on the outside and square on the inside. In the small pool, there was a pool of clear water that looked no different from ordinary water. Chapter 747. When the old man saw that everyone had arrived, he slowly straightened his body and saluted the honorable of all holies and the other top experts without saying a word. According to the ranking, enter the Jasper pool one by one from the 1st to the 10th. Those of the heavenly ascension realm will enter first. The honorable of all holies moved the flying carpet to the edge of the Jasper pool, then turned around and instructed, before entering the Jasper pool, it's best to put away all the treasures and valuables you have on you. The process of being washed by the Jasper pool's water will be a little painful. No matter what, you must persevere or you will lose your life in there. Thus, everyone's gaze gathered on Xiaoling Yu. With a thought, Xiaoling Yu put all the treasures he had left in his body into the chaos spectrum. Before entering the Jasper pool, Xiaoling Yu left the chaos spectrum invisible beside the Jasper pool. Just as Xiaoling Yu's foot touched the Jasper pool's water, a thick mist suddenly rose from the Jasper pool. In an instant, the mist enveloped the entire mountain peak. All the experts' vision was blurred by the mist, and even their divine consciousness could not penetrate the mist. The Jasper pool's water gave people a bone-chilling feeling. Even though Xiaoling Yu's physical body was comparable to a divine spirit treasure, and even though the primordial fire was circulating in his body, he still felt an unbearable chill coming from the soles of his feet. He could not help but shiver. Bracing himself, Xiaoling Yu took a big step forward, and his entire body instantly fell into the Jasper pool. In the next moment, he felt his entire body being frozen. First, it was the coldness that penetrated his soul. Then he realized that his soul could no longer feel the existence of his body. After another 2 breaths of time, even his soul was frozen, but his consciousness was still very clear. With a thought, Xiaoling Yu saw that his clothes had disappeared, and the Jasper pool's water had formed a whirlpool around him. The rapidly spinning Jasper pool's water was like countless sharp blades, cutting countless wounds on Xiaoling Yu's frozen body. The strange thing was that even though he could no longer feel his body, every time he was cut, he would feel a sharp pain pass through his nerves and into his brain, which would then affect the depths of his soul. This strange pain was something Xiaoling Yu had never experienced before. It was as if ice blades were cutting into his soul. He had suffered countless hardships and even had his body burned by the heavenly fire, but he still felt like he couldn't bear it. What was even stranger was that even though his muscles, bones, blood, and flesh had been frozen, blood was still flowing out of his wounds. Blood dyed the water of the jade pool red as an omnipotent master. The amount of blood in Xiao Lingyu's body was immeasurable. However, it could not withstand such an unstoppable flow. Sooner or later, it would all be drained away. Since his body was no longer under his control, the flow of blood naturally wouldn't stop. Even the blood crystals started to break down, and the essence blood within them was also drawn out. When all the blood and essence had flowed out, the dark red water in the jasper pond spun even faster. However, the temperature of the water, which was originally extremely cold, gradually increased. Gradually, Xiao Lingyu finally felt warmth again. His body also regained some feeling, and his soul was also recovering. However, the temperature of the jasper pond didn't stop rising. Instead, it continued to rise. In just a few breaths, the water in the jasper pond had reached a level where even Xiao Lingyu could feel a burning pain. Just now, this pool of water was able to freeze and cut open my body. Now, it's reasonable for it to be able to make me feel a burning pain. It wouldn't be strange if it could melt my body. This pool of water looks ordinary, but how could it possess such a powerful power? Xiao Lingyu thought in the depths of his consciousness. One moment, it's bone-piercing cold. The next moment, it's burning hot. This is the real combination of ice and fire. The water in the jasper pond seemed to have been ignited. Wisps of strange flames appeared in the water. Those flames didn't just burn Xiao Lingyu's body, they also burned the blood that flowed out of his body. His body and blood were burning like the water in the jasper pond. Regardless of whether it was the cold from before or the raging flames now, they stopped increasing their power after reaching a certain level. It wasn't clear if their power could only reach this level or if it was based on each cultivator's body's endurance. Xiao Lingyu felt that it was based on each cultivator's condition. If every cultivator was like this after entering the jasper pond, those sage god cultivators would have lost their lives the moment they entered. The power of the jasper pond's fire stopped when it reached the level where it could melt divine spiritual treasures. In other words, Xiao Lingyu's body was also being melted now. However, every part of his body that was melted would be replenished by the burning blood. The melted blood, flesh, tendons, and bones weren't actually incinerated into nothingness. Instead, after being refined, they returned to the body with the blood. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu finally understood the method of the jasper pond's cleansing. In fact, it used the power of ice to freeze the body's blood, flesh, tendons, and bones, causing the useful and useless parts to lose their vitality. Naturally, they would lose their resistance. Then, it was abruptly calcined with high temperature. The useless parts could no longer be protected by the strong body's quality and would be expelled from the body. Cultivators could use various methods to purify their bodies, but some useless impurities were very tenacious. They attached themselves to the useful flesh and blood essence and were protected by the body. Ordinary methods couldn't be removed at all. In the past, Xiao Lingyu had fused with too many blood vessels. Although his body was strong and had been tempered countless times, every time his quality increased, many materials would fuse with his body. His blood vessels could be said to be of high quality, but he had also absorbed all kinds of impurities. Therefore, the blood vessels in his body were very heterogeneous. This was something that even an expert could see, and he knew it in his heart. After this jasper pond's cleansing, his body would become pure. It would also completely fuse his blood vessels into a pure blood vessel that belonged only to him. His body and blood vessels would be more compatible with his soul and chaotic divine power. This would increase his strength. Of course, Xiao Lingyu could only see the general idea. There should be other more detailed methods, but he couldn't see them in a short period of time. Under the burning of the flames, his body gradually melted. After being refined, it would return to the body with the calcined blood. This process lasted for about an hour before it was complete. The water of the Jasper Pond gradually became clear and calm again. Shaolin Yu's Jasper Pond's cleansing was over. He walked out of the Jasper Pond with an indifferent expression and put on a brand new green robe. The mist that shrouded the peak of the sacred mountain quickly dissipated. Shaolin Yu saw the flying carpet again, as well as the experts on it. Congratulations, Xiao Daoyu, for your successful cleansing. The Venerable of All Saints and the experts congratulated him one after another. Shaolin Yu just smiled and cupped his fist at everyone. Then, he walked onto the flying carpet without the slightest hint of complacency. His expression was calm, and his aura was steady. Next, the second place of the Heavenly Ingress Realm competition went to Cleanse. After about 4 hours, he successfully came out, but he looked like he still had lingering fears. The top 10 of the Heavenly Ingress Realm entered the Jasper Pond one after another. However, 3 of them didn't walk out of the Jasper Pond, and their bodies and souls were destroyed inside. The top 10 of the Holy God Realm all frowned, and their expressions were grave. Even the first place seemed to be unable to lift his feet when it was his turn to cleanse. The power of the Jasper Pond's water depends on everyone's cultivation. With everyone's peak strength in the Holy God Realm, there's an 80 to 90% chance that you'll be able to come out smoothly. After cleansing, your chances of advancing to the Heavenly Ingress Realm will also increase to over 70%. The Venerable of All Saints comforted and encouraged them. Most of the Holy God Realm experts had already expressed their willingness to join the Sacred Army. Just as the Venerable of All Saints said, 9 out of the 10 Holy Gods successfully came out. The success rate was much higher than the Heavenly Ingress Realm. After the cleansing, everyone bowed to the old man and bid farewell. The Venerable of All Saints then drove the flying carpet to the foot of the sacred mountain. At this point, the Sacred Army's great battle arena could be considered to have come to a perfect end. Everyone naturally wouldn't stay and bid farewell to the Venerable of All Saints. Before leaving, the Venerable of All Saints said to Shaolin Yu, as if joking, "I hope that when Brother Xiao becomes a leader in the future, you won't be an enemy of the Sacred Army." Shaolin Yu replied, "As long as the Sacred Army doesn't dwell on those trivial matters of the past." The Venerable of All Saints, Saber 9, and Shaman King. These 3 peak experts of the Heavenly Ingress Island all wanted to keep Shaolin Yu here and grind his bones to dust. However, they couldn't do so at the moment. Firstly, Shaolin Yu was protected by Earth's experts like the Mahamayuri. Secondly, Shaolin Yu had just won first place in the Heavenly Ingress Realm battle arena. His reputation was at its peak. Thirdly, everyone's attention should be placed on dealing with the invasion of demons rather than internal strife. After leaving the Sacred Army's territory, Shaolin Yu finally relaxed a little. He discovered that after his cleansing, his body was more in tune with nature. His body could sense the existence of heaven and earth's might and nature's precepts more clearly. This trip was worth it. Shaolin Yu could not help but secretly praise him. Although the battle was very dangerous and the Jasper Pool was very torturous, the Sacred Army's great battle arena was located in the Heavenly Ingress Island. There are many markets on Heavenly Saint Island. That is where cultivators gather. It is also the place where news spreads the fastest. With Brother Zhao's current reputation, as long as you make a few trips to those markets, you will definitely be able to gather a group of people. However, although the peak experts have already reached an agreement and tacit understanding, the Venerable of All Saints, Saber 9, and Shaman King all seem to hate you to the core. It's hard to guarantee that they won't secretly attack you. You have to be on guard at all times. If you encounter danger, just hide. You're quite good at hiding. I have an important matter to attend to soon. Jiang Shang and the others will be coming with me. During this period, Brother Xiao should keep a low profile and avoid provoking those peak experts. Chapter 748. Keep a low profile? Haven't I always kept a low profile? Shaolin Yu shrugged his shoulders, then invited Fudi out and let it carry him on its journey. Shaolin Yu had some experience in building a faction. He knew that the most important thing for people to join him wasn't how famous he was, but how to make them feel the benefits of joining him. Moreover, he had to be able to maintain this benefit for a long time. Although relying on faith was stable and lasting, it was a pity that it was almost impossible for those saint gods or heaven-reaching realm experts to develop faith in him. The world was bustling with activity for fame and fortune. Most cultivators weren't famous, but they would definitely be greedy for some benefits. If you wanted other cultivators to listen to you without benefits, you had to be able to control their life and death. In order to give benefits to your subordinates, you had to be able to protect them and provide for their cultivation needs. Only then would they be willing to be used. In this way, Xiaoling Yu had to be powerful. Moreover, he had to be very wealthy or have a relatively high income. Xiaoling Yu's strength had been demonstrated in the Sacred Army's arena. There was no doubt about this. Now, many cultivators had compared him to the top masters. Although it was publicly acknowledged that he was inferior, it wasn't far off. As for his wealth, Xiaoling Yu had a lot of spirit stones. However, these spirit stones could only support himself and his friends, but they couldn't support a large faction. Therefore, it was imperative for him to strengthen his wealth first. Another important point was that for a large force to form and rise, it was impossible for Xiaoling Yu to manage it alone. At the beginning of the formation of a large force, he needed the help of a few cultivators who were absolutely loyal to him. In the future, the management of the large force would also rely on these loyal cultivators to help him. One person's plan was short, but many people's wisdom was greater. Xiaoling Yu entered the chaos spectrum and began to discuss with Qing Xian and Miao Ying. According to the Peacock Bright Monarch, it won't take long for the demons to invade. That's why the Peacock Bright Monarch told you to establish your faction quickly. In other words, you have to gather a large number of occult divine stones. I'm afraid that's a little too difficult. After all, you're not a top expert. Qing Xian used to be the leader of a faction in the immortal world. She knew how difficult it was to establish and maintain a large force. There are only two ways to increase your wealth quickly. The first is to find a treasure hoard. The second is to snatch it. Rather than relying on doing business on Skirich Island, with the cultivators that are incomparably shrewd, to rapidly increase your wealth, it would be better to snatch it, Miao Ying said. Robbing is definitely out of the question. Right now, the peak experts of Heavenspan Saint Island are all roaming around the island. They won't allow anything like that to happen before the invasion of the other races. Moreover, robbing is not a proper method after all. It will make other cultivators laugh at us and hate us. Qing Xian shook his head and said, "Then we can only look for treasures." Miao Ying said in a relaxed manner, "Heavenspan Saint Island is the place where countless peak experts of the god realm gathered and cultivated. There must be a lot of treasures here. There's another advantage to looking for treasures. Not only can we obtain a large number of occult divine stones, but we also have a chance to obtain some powerful magic treasures, pills, or high-quality cultivation materials." Xiaoling Yu smiled wryly. Countless cultivators have cultivated and traveled around Heavenspan Saint Island. The treasures that can be easily found have already been discovered by them. Why would they wait for us to take advantage of them for free? Qing Xian nodded. There must be treasures, but they must be hidden very deeply and difficult to find. Xiaoling Yu and his two wives fell into silence at this point. They were thinking about the treasure hunt. Treasure hunt. Actually, I can help. Ling, who had been very quiet for many years, suddenly spoke at this time. Xiaoling Yu, Qing Xian, and Miao Ying were all stunned at first, and then asked at the same time, "You have a way?" Ling nodded and said, "I have a way, but it has to wait until my cultivation reaches the Heavenspan realm." Ling had received the help of the investiture of the gods before, so she had already reached the Heavenspan realm. However, she did not have the strength to reach the Heavenspan realm. It was different from ordinary cultivators. Her cultivation could not be improved just by absorbing some heaven and earth essence in occult divine stones. She needed to devour high-level illusionary spirits. With Ling Er's current level, If she wanted to advance to the Heavenspan realm, she could only devour Heavenspan illusionary spirits. Illusionary spirits were rare, and Heavenspan illusionary spirits were even rarer. However, there were still some rare ones. In the countless jade slips that Xiao Lingyu collected before, there was a carved content that introduced illusionary spirits. In the southeast corner of Heavenspan's sacred island, there was a long and narrow peninsula called Spine Peninsula. Looking from a high altitude, the shape of the Spine Peninsula was like a huge spine piercing from Heavenspan's sacred island to the Heavenspan South Sea. Since it was a peninsula, it naturally extended from Heavenspan sacred island to the sea. Although it was on Heavenspan sacred island, the Spine Peninsula was almost isolated from Heavenspan sacred island, and almost no cultivators would set foot on the Spine Peninsula. The reason for this was that there were not only countless fierce beasts in the Spine Peninsula, but also very powerful wild beasts. Often, powerful sea beasts that originally lived in the boundless sea would come ashore from there. This was not the key point. In the air of the Spine Peninsula, there was a special kind of pollen all year round. This pollen was colorless and odorless, and could not be seen with the naked eye at all. However, it was very corrosive to the body of cultivators. Even if they formed a protective shield with their cultivation power to resist, the pollen would stick to the shield. Once the pollen reached a certain amount, it would break through the cultivator's protective shield. However, the cultivator did not know when their protective shield would be broken. Moreover, the pollen could stick to the cultivator's divine sense. If the cultivator released his divine sense and retrieved it, the pollen would be brought into his soul, and then his soul would be eroded. When the body and soul were eroded, the cultivator would gradually lose his mind and become as brutal as those fierce beasts and savage beasts, losing his reason and nature. However, on Heavenspan's sacred island, only the Spine Peninsula had illusionary spirits. Xiao Lingyu did not hesitate and decided to take a trip to the Spine Peninsula. However, before going, he first checked the primal chaos spectrum. This time, Xiao Lingyu won the first place in the Holy Army Great Battle Arena. He also got 2 divine spiritual treasures in the previous elimination round. He had to give these magic treasures to Qing Xian, Miao Ying, Devourer of Heaven, and Ling, or as for the powerful auxiliary technique, it was a devil art. Although Xiao Lingyu could also cultivate it, the effect was not good. He gave it to Miao Ying. On the Spine Peninsula, divine sense could not be released. He was afraid that it would be difficult to take care of everyone if he went in alone. It was better for everyone to act together. Therefore, before going to the Spine Peninsula, it was safer to let his relatives and friends improve their strength. Heavenspan's sacred island was too big. Under the situation where the tube-shaped sacred tool could not be used, Xiao Lingyu could only let Fudi travel at full speed. Even though Fudi was extremely fast, it still took thousands of years. Not counting the time in the primal chaos spectrum, Xiao Lingyu had not been on Heavenspan's sacred island for many years. A few thousand years was not a long time for Heavenspan realm cultivators. When the Peacock Bright Monarch said that she wanted to build a force in a short time, this short time was probably measured in tens of thousands of years. In the thousands of years on the road, tens of millions of years would pass in the primal chaos spectrum. Such a long time was definitely enough for them to refine the divine spiritual treasures. After more than 3,700 years, Fudi carried Xiao Lingyu across thousands of mountains and rivers to the southeast corner of Heavenspan's sacred island. They were getting closer and closer to the Spine Peninsula. Along the way, they would occasionally encounter some ignorant cultivators or Yao beasts. However, Xiao Lingyu, who was focused on rushing forward, simply ordered the Fudi to speed up. He did not waste any time on pointless fights. Naturally, neither bandits nor Yao beasts could stop the Fudi. When they arrived at the Spine Peninsula, Xiao Lingyu brought Fudi into the primal chaos spectrum to rest for a while. Then, he invited everyone out of the primal chaos spectrum and entered the Spine Peninsula together. Everyone did not release their soul power. However, they were divided into two groups. They took turns to release their power to form a defensive barrier to resist the invisible pollen around them. Although the pollen's corrosive power was strong, it would take at least 3 days to break through the defensive barrier of a heavenspan powerhouse. Xiao Yu had everyone take turns to release their power to form a barrier every other day. This way, their bodies would not be invaded by the pollen. Originally, if they wanted to go deep into the Spine Peninsula, they could go around the sea or fly over from high altitude. However, the phantom powerhouses of the Spine Peninsula did not have a fixed location. They could be anywhere on the Spine Peninsula. Under the situation where their divine sense could not be released, everyone could only fly at a low altitude and let Ling search for them based on his understanding and senses of the phantom. However, after 30 years in the Spine Peninsula, before they could find the phantom, they were stopped by a group of fierce beasts. This group of fierce beasts looked like poisonous scorpions. Not only were their bodies huge, but they also had a pair of black wings. There were nearly 100 of them. The weakest of them was at the mid-stage of the Saint God realm, while the strongest was comparable to the late stage of the Heavenspan Sacred Island. Prepare for battle. Release your power to protect yourselves. We must finish the battle as soon as possible. As soon as Xiao Yu finished speaking, Ling disappeared without a trace. Xiao Yu had already experienced Ling Er's concealment ability when she first met her in the narrow divine world. Now, if Ling wanted to conceal herself, even those peak powerhouses might not be able to find her. Although Ling Er's power had not reached the Heavenspan realm, she could hide herself. If she suddenly launched a sneak attack, even a Heavenspan powerhouse would not be able to withstand it. Miaoing took out her blood flute. Now, not only was she at the mid-stage of the Heavenspan realm, she also had the power of a Heavenspan realm expert. Coupled with her blood flute, her fighting strength was naturally not weak. Moreover, she had just learned a powerful auxiliary technique. She, who had not fought for many years, could use these fierce beasts to practice. Fudi also had the strength of a Heavenspan realm expert. He was placed in Xiao Yu's group. Chapter 749. From the beginning to the end of the battle, it only took half an hour. In fact, Xiao Yu's side had already gained the upper hand, but those fierce beasts were not afraid of death. Even though they were obviously at a disadvantage, they did not retreat. In order to avoid injuries, the experts on Xiao Yu's side mainly focused on defense and fought more conservatively, so the battle dragged on for a long time. In particular, the fierce beast at the late stage of the heaven-reaching realm attacked like a madman. The fighting strength it displayed was still very shocking. If Xiao Yu had not just improved her strength by bathing in the jade pool, this battle might not have been easy. Nearly 100 fierce beasts were all killed in battle, and their corpses were all unceremoniously devoured by the foodies. The appearance and performance of these fierce beasts made the experts on Xiao Yu's side realize the danger of the Spine Peninsula, and they became more careful in their actions later. In the next 200 years, similar battles often occurred, and more fierce beasts were devoured by the foodies. Xiao Yu and the other experts naturally did not suffer any injuries, because they could only win steadily. If the other party was too strong or too large in number, they would directly hide in the chaotic spectrum and wait for the other party to retreat before coming out. With the chaotic spectrum as a guarantee, Xiao Yu and the other experts advanced into the depths of the Spine Peninsula without any danger. 240 years after they entered the Spine Peninsula, Ling finally felt the traces of the phantom experts. After 5 years of searching and tracking, they finally blocked a group of nearly 1,000 phantom spirits into a small canyon. The canyon was no more than 10,000 feet long and only a little more than 1,000 feet wide. There were steep cliffs on both sides of the canyon, and there were piles of rocks in the canyon. The cultivation of this group of phantom spirits was very ordinary, and the strongest was only at the middle stage of the holy god. Under the blockade of Xiao Yu and the other experts, they could not escape the small canyon at all. It was not difficult for Xiaoling Yu and the other experts to capture or kill these phantom spirits. After all, these phantom spirits could not hide like Ling Er. However, Ling Er suggested that they just surround these phantom spirits. She believed that these phantom spirits would definitely ask for help, and it would not be long before the phantom spirit experts would come to help. Besieging and attacking reinforcements was indeed a better method. It could save Xiaoling Yu and the other experts a lot of trouble and time. However, what made everyone depressed was that before the illusionary spirit experts arrived, a wild giant beast suddenly arrived. This wild beast was like a small mountain. Its entire body was flat, and on its back was a large round shell that seemed to be made of black iron. It looked like a tortoise, but around the tortoise shell were 10 snake-like heads. There were also dozens of thick black tentacles. It looked extremely frightening. Each of its heads had 2 lantern-sized red eyes and 2 rows of sharp sword-like teeth at the side of its mouth. Its mouth was also constantly spitting out scarlet snake tongue. It was a giant beast and at the same time a fierce beast. Its soul had been eroded by the pollen of the spine peninsula all year round, and it was extremely violent. From the aura fluctuations that surged out of its body, it could be seen that its cultivation was at the peak of the late stage of the heaven-connecting realm. On its body, there was also the vicissitudes and simple aura unique to wild beasts. You guys continue to surround this small canyon. I'll try out this wild giant beast ability. Xiaoling Yu held the life-severing dagger in her hand, and then resolutely faced the wild giant beast that was rapidly charging over. Before the savage behemoth even got close, there were already gusts of hurricanes sweeping over. There were even large black clouds gathering above its head. It was like a battle fortress with boundless magical power, and it was also like it was leading an army to break through enemy lines. Its momentum was astonishing. Compared to the mighty might of the wild giant beast, Xiaoling Yu seemed a little small and weak. The most important reason why the cultivators of heaven-connecting Saint Island were not willing to come to the Spine Peninsula to face these wild giant beasts was not because of how terrifying their strength was, but because the wild giant beasts could release their spiritual sense to draw upon the power of heaven and earth, while the cultivators could not. The wild giant beasts' souls had been eroded by the pollen for countless years, and they had long lost their original nature. They did not mind being eroded by the pollen, and would not mind becoming more violent and crazy. However, the cultivators did not want to be eroded by the pollen, so they did not dare to release their spiritual sense and were unable to communicate with the power of heaven and earth. When fighting the wild giant beasts, they would suffer greatly. Xiaoling Yu had long known this, but he had a way to deal with it. The wings of extreme speed appear behind him, and before the wild giant beast could charge over, Xiaoling Yu had already set up a soul-sealing formation. This soul-sealing formation covered a large area around the small valley, and under its cover, any spiritual sense would be firmly restrained. As long as a spiritual sense formed from spiritual sense appeared, it would be devoured by the soul-sealing formation. The wild giant beast did not know the power of the soul-sealing formation, and with its bloodthirsty and violent nature, it only knew to flatten all obstacles in its path. Any demonic beast, wild beast, or cultivator it encountered would be its meal. Even if it could not defeat it, it would fight to the end. This was the characteristic of all wild beasts and wild beasts. The savage behemoth plunged into the soul-sealing array. Then, in the rolling fog, its round eyes began to release rays of red light, using this to search for the existence of the enemy. It did not realize that its soul power had disappeared after penetrating its body. It also did not realize that the black clouds that were originally covering the sky above its head had begun to rapidly dissipate. When its blood-red gaze swept over Xiaoling Yu, its 10 heads simultaneously extended their snake tongues. The 10 scarlet snake tongues were like divine whips, and in an instant, Xiaoling Yu's entire body was tightly bound. Even though Xiaoling Yu felt that his reaction was fast enough, he could not avoid those snake tongues. He was tightly bound, and a huge force was transmitted to his entire body, causing his bones to emit crisp, crackling sounds. With a thought, the blood and power in his body simultaneously flowed into the life-severing dagger, and then Shaolin Yu's arm that held the life-severing dagger swung with all its might. Roar! The wild giant beast's 10 heads roared at the same time, because it felt that its tongue, which was strong enough to split the heavens and split the earth, had been severely damaged. A sharp pain came from its tongue, and the wild giant beast immediately retracted its tongue. Its 20 blood-red eyes stared fixedly at Shaolin Yu, who had regained his freedom. When it saw the life-severing dagger in Shaolin Yu's hand, it appeared to be somewhat disgusted and fearful. However, its bloodlust had already become its nature. A moment later, it launched another attack. Its 10 mouths spat out an array of demonic light at the same time, and its dozens of tentacles also suddenly lengthened, lashing out from all directions. In an instant, with so many attacks coming at the same time, Shaolin Yu thought for a moment, then chose to hide in the primal chaos spectrum. It wasn't that he couldn't handle it, but that on this spine peninsula he could encounter other dangers at any time. He couldn't take any risks in every battle. Shaolin Yu's sudden disappearance caused the wild beast's attack to miss. It was extremely surprised and angry that its enemy had disappeared just like that. Just as it was about to rush out of the range of the soul-sealing array to look for other enemies, Shaolin Yu strangely appeared again and instantly landed in front of it. The life-severing dagger once again bloomed with a dazzling demonic light, but it didn't shoot out a primal chaos blade aura. Instead, Shaolin Yu swung it with all his strength, slashing at one of the wild giant beast's heads. The wild giant beast wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Its other 9 heads spat out demonic light at the same time, and its dozens of tentacles also lashed out. Before the wild giant beast's attack arrived, the life-severing dagger had already ruthlessly slashed down, and the wild giant beast instantly lost one of its heads. The wild giant beast's attack became much slower because of the intense pain and daze caused by the loss of one of its heads. Shaolin Yu used this opportunity to hide in the primal chaos spectrum again. Losing one of its heads had a significant impact on the wild giant beast's strength, but it definitely wouldn't cause it to lose its ability to fight. Its strength was still formidable. Unfortunately, no matter how violent it was and how much it wanted to fight to the death with its enemy, it couldn't do anything about the enemy hiding again. This caused it to angrily slap the continent of the spine peninsula with its tentacles, causing the surrounding mountains to shake. The momentum was so great that even Miao Ying and the other powerhouses outside frowned slightly. They couldn't help but worry for Shaolin Yu. With the primal chaos spectrum, Shaolin Yu was destined to not be defeated. At this time, for the wild giant beast, escaping was undoubtedly the best choice, but it had no concept of escaping at all. Therefore, after Shaolin Yu appeared a few more times, the wild giant beast only had 1 head left, and this last head was already under Shaolin Yu's life-severing dagger, and it seemed like it was about to be chopped off. However, this time, Shaolin Yu didn't get what she wanted. The wild giant beast retracted its last head into its turtle shell. Immediately after, the wild giant beast's aura began to rise crazily. Gusts of wind whistled from its body, and its mountain-like body began to spin rapidly. As the wild wind raged and the wild giant beast's body spun crazily, the surrounding fog formed by the array, the mountain rocks, and even the spatial fluctuations began to spin. Although the soul-sealing array had been improved and strengthened by Shaolin Yu, it gradually couldn't withstand it. Shaolin Yu knew that the savage behemoth was about to unleash some kind of ultimate move or escape. He narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then, the vertical eye between his eyebrows suddenly opened. A beam of destructive blood light accurately hit the enormous savage behemoth. The wild giant beast's body was extremely strong, but it was still broken by the destructive bloody light. A huge bloody hole was blown open in its body, Blood began to spurt from the bloody hole. The wild giant beast suffered such a heavy injury and immediately stopped spinning and fell heavily to the ground. However, it still didn't dare to show its remaining head. Xiao Lingyu waved the life-severing dagger and pounced forward, continuously slashing at the wild giant beast's wound. As the wound grew bigger, the wild giant beast's injuries naturally became more serious, and its aura became weaker and weaker. After attacking for nearly an hour, Xiao Lingyu finally killed the wild giant beast before the soul-sealing array collapsed. Chapter 750. After swallowing the wild beast, the foodie fell asleep, and Xiao Lingyu sent it into the primal chaos spectrum. Every time the foodie fell asleep, it would take a long time, but this period of time could pass very quickly in the primal chaos spectrum, so they didn't have to wait too long outside. The arrival of the wild beast did not give the phantom a chance to escape, and they were still trapped in the canyon. After waiting for a few decades, the foodie woke up after sleeping for hundreds of thousands of years in the primal chaos spectrum, but the phantom still did not appear. Don't worry, even if it's a heaven-reaching powerhouse, it will take time to travel. We just have to wait patiently. Qing Xian looked very patient, but working so hard every day, watching the phantom in the canyon while changing shifts to defend against the omnipresent pollen, is really torturous. Miao Ying, who was not very patient, was a little impatient. The illusory spirit experts will definitely come, Linger said with incomparable certainty. Although they didn't know why Linger was so sure, everyone still believed in Ling, who was usually silent and was always on guard. They waited for another few decades. During this time, they fought with many groups of ferocious beasts and encountered another ferocious beast. However, Xiao Lingyu and the other experts still persevered and killed many ferocious beasts. Although it was very difficult for Miao Ying and the other powerhouses, except for Xiao Lingyu, the days in the Spine Peninsula were the most fulfilling since they came to heaven, reaching Holy Island. Hiding in the primal chaos spectrum every day was really boring and uncomfortable, and this kind of fighting could also make them more familiar with their realm and strength, which was also very beneficial for the future. The illusory spirit expert that everyone had been waiting for had finally arrived. However, because they didn't dare to release their divine sense, they didn't discover the other party's shadow. It was only Ling who said that, and only Ling could sense the existence of the illusory spirit expert. It's not far away, staring at us. Although its concealment method is not as good as mine, it's still very clever. You all should be careful. Ling reminded everyone. Since it's here, it proves that it wants to save the phantom in the canyon. It can hide itself, but it can't take away the phantom in the canyon. As long as we stay here, it will definitely show itself. Xiao Lingyu said in a relaxed manner. But what surprised Xiao Lingyu and the other powerhouses was that the phantom didn't come close, nor did it show itself, just watching from the side. It should have felt our strength, so it doesn't dare to act rashly. It seems to be waiting for some opportunity. After waiting for a few months, Ling said, "No, it should be waiting for reinforcements. I'm afraid it won't be long before more illusionary spirit experts arrive." Xiao Lingyu frowned and said with narrowed eyes, "Then what should we do?" Miao Ying, who was not good at wisdom, asked. "It's very simple. Since it cares about the phantom in the canyon, we'll attack those phantom. It shouldn't just watch those phantom be destroyed. When it's anxious, it will naturally come out." Miao Ying said with a smile. "That's a good idea." Miao Ying nodded. "Then you go in and kill them. Don't kill too fast. Take your time." Xiao Lingyu said to Miao Ying. Miao Ying smiled and then floated away. Miao Ying was, after all, a true supreme being. Although those phantom spirits seemed special, they were still too weak in front of her. If she were to exert her full power, she would be able to kill all the phantom spirits in the small valley in just a few breaths. However, in order to draw out the illusory spirit expert, Miao Ying followed Xiao Lingyu's instructions and continued to use powerful moves, but did not attack the place where the illusory spirits gathered. Occasionally, she would kill one or two of them. The situation in the valley naturally became serious. However, that illusory spirit expert was still indifferent, only watching from the outside and constantly changing his position. Even though Miao Ying killed more than half of the phantom in the small canyon, the phantom still didn't make the slightest move. In desperation, Miao Ying had to leave behind a small half of the phantom and leave the small canyon. After thinking for a while, Xiaoling Yu led everyone into the primal chaos spectrum. The phantom in the small canyon began to flee outside. They seemed to be able to sense the exact location of the phantom. After leaving the small canyon, they quickly moved over. The phantom expert still did not dare to show himself, but he silently led the group of frightened phantom spirits and quickly retreated. Xiaoling Yu led everyone out of the primal chaos spectrum and chased in the direction of the phantom. Xiaoling Yu thought that since the illusory spirit ranker had already met up with this group of illusory spirits, he would protect them as they left. This way, he would be able to keep the illusory spirit ranker, but the illusory spirit ranker did not let him do as he wished. When they caught up, the illusory spirit ranker actually left the illusory spirit group and quietly hid. Without killing those ordinary phantom, Xiaoling Yu once again brought them into the primal chaos spectrum, but left Ling Er outside. Ling Er's concealment technique was much better than that of the phantom. Moreover, Ling Er could move when hidden. The group of illusionary spirits chased after the illusionary spirit expert and surrounded him. Ling Er followed them secretly. She could feel the position of the illusionary spirit expert. Previously, outside the small canyon, Ling Er was ready to hide and sneak attack the phantom. However, the other party was very cautious and kept moving, so Ling Er didn't act rashly. After Ling Er chased far away, Xiaoling Yu led everyone out of the primal chaos spectrum again and then followed from afar. Due to the existence of a group of illusionary spirits with low cultivation bases, the illusionary spirit expert was unable to get rid of Ling Er's tracking. 10 days after leaving the small canyon, Ling Er finally found a suitable opportunity to make a move. She suddenly appeared at a place 30 feet away from the illusionary spirit expert. With a wave of her sleeve, a large nebula suddenly formed, instantly surrounding the illusionary spirit expert. The phantom was surprised and quickly retreated thousands of feet away. However, what it didn't expect was that the nebula followed it like a shadow and still surrounded it. No matter if it used its power or some special ability, it couldn't erase the nebula. At this moment, Xiaoling Yu and the other experts had already caught up, and the phantom fled at full speed without hesitation. The speed of the phantom was average. At least, it was much slower than Xiaoling Yu and the foodie, especially the foodie. After devouring 2 savage beasts, its strength had already reached the late stage of the heavenly ascension realm, and its speed was extremely fast. As it ran with all its might, the distance between it and the phantom was getting closer and closer. With the cover of the nebula, the phantom was no longer able to hide, and Xiaoling Yu and the other experts would not lose sight of their target. However, just as the foodie was about to catch up to the phantom, the space at the foot of a mountain suddenly fluctuated, and then more than 10 phantom experts appeared. These dozen or so phantom experts were all at the heavenly ascension realm, and there was no lack of extremely powerful existences among them. The illusory spirit expert who was being chased stopped, and then, together with the other illusory spirit experts, charged towards Xiaoling Yu. Xiaoling Yu asked her relatives and friends who were not at the heavenly ascension realm to return to the primal chaos catalog, and then resolutely went forward to meet them. Xiaoling Yu, foodie, and Miao Ying were all at the heavenly ascension realm. Although Ling Er's power was not at the heavenly ascension realm, she could still hide herself, so she stayed outside. The other side had 16 phantom experts, and Xiaoling Yu only had 3. It seemed like they were at a disadvantage, but in reality, that was not the case. The phantom experts were good at concealment and had many attacking methods, but their attacking power was not very strong. Moreover, Their defensive power was weaker than ordinary Heavenly Ascension Realm experts, and they could not use magic treasures, so their fighting strength was very limited. Xiaoling Yu and the Foodie both had extremely strong defensive power, and their attacking methods were not bad either. Miao Ying's defense was slightly weaker, but her blood flute's attack was definitely strong enough. As a result, the first confrontation between the two sides made the 10 Phantom experts realize the danger. They immediately huddled together and prepared to escape together. More than a dozen Phantom experts gathered together. Their speed was extremely fast, but they could not disperse the nebula around the previous Phantom expert, so they could not form a way to get rid of it. Xiaoling Yu and the other experts have been chasing closely. However, with more than a dozen Phantom experts together, their speed was not much slower than theirs. They could not catch up at all in a short period of time. The Phantom experts could survive for a long time on this incomparably dangerous spine peninsula because they were good at concealment and because they were very fast after huddling together. Foodie was now at the late stage of the Heavenly Ascension realm. Its speed was estimated to be a little slower than those top experts. Even it was very difficult for it to catch up with these Phantom experts. It could be seen how fast these Phantom experts were. Xiaoling Yu, Miao Ying, and Linger were all on Foodie's back. Foodie was running wildly on 4 hooves. From time to time, they would launch an attack, but because they did not release their divine thoughts, they were basically easily dodged by the other side. There were many Phantom experts on this spine peninsula, but they should only have a dozen or so Heavenly Ascension Realm experts. They did not expect their own kind to support them, and they would not bring the enemy to the place where the Phantom gathered. They could only move at full speed on the spine peninsula. However, it was not a good idea to escape like this without being able to get rid of the enemy. Sooner or later, they would be caught up. After discussing for a while, they changed their route. It took nearly a month for the group of Phantom experts to fly to the side of a waterfall. Then, they passed through the water curtain of the waterfall and entered a very hidden crack in the mountain. The crack in the mountain was very narrow, only allowing one person pass through, but it was dark and narrow. Foodie ran here and was invited into the Spirit Beast bag by Xiaoling Yu. Then, Xiaoling Yu, Linger, and Miao Ying rushed into the crack sideways to continue the search. At first, the crack in the mountain was very narrow, but the deeper it went, the wider it became. There were water droplets dripping from it, making it very wet. Because they were not sure where the crack in the mountain led to and whether the Phantom would escape through this place, Xiaoling Yu felt that it might be dangerous to continue chasing like this, but they still braced themselves and continued to move forward. Anyway, they could just hide in the chaotic spectrum. Chapter 751. The group of illusory spirit experts knew that they couldn't get rid of them, so naturally, they deliberately lured the enemy here. They definitely had their own motives. The experts on Xiaoling Yu's side couldn't guess the other party's intentions, but since they had already chased them here, there was no reason for them to retreat halfway. The cracks in the mountain gradually became twisted and turned, and Xiaoling Yu also saw that there was something unusual about this place. This kind of crack in the mountain had already turned into a cave. Logically speaking, since it was so humid inside, there should be some special plants living here, and some fierce beasts should treat this place as their nest. However, after coming in for so long, Xiaoling Yu didn't find any flowers or plants, nor did he see any fierce beasts or demon beasts. It was even difficult to feel the fluctuations of life here. After moving forward for a while, Xiaoling Yu suddenly stopped because he could clearly feel a dangerous aura. There must be some powerful danger here, Xiaoling Yu said with a frown. Then should we continue to chase? Miao Ying asked. Of course, Xiaoling Yu said firmly. Those illusory spirits are not afraid of danger, so why should we be afraid? At most, we can hide in the primal chaos spectrum. After going deeper into the mountain crack for a while, they finally caught up with the group of illusory spirit experts. In addition to those illusory spirit experts, Xiaoling Yu also saw a stone door. Looking at the stone door, it actually looked a little familiar. It was extremely similar to the stone door that Zhang Fong and He Tai had found. Whether it was the shape, size, or the patterns on it, they were all similar. However, the difference was that this stone door was open, and there were traces of cracks. The dozen or so illusory spirit experts were right in front of the stone door, still hesitating. The closer they got to the stone door, the stronger the dangerous aura became. Obviously, the dozen or so illusory spirit experts already knew about the situation here. They wanted to use the dangerous aura here to scare away the enemy. Not only did the enemy not retreat, but they were also approaching. After hesitating for a moment, the dozen or so illusory spirit experts saw Xiao Lingyu moving forward again, and they passed through the stone door. The previous battle had let these phantom powerhouses know that their attack power could not do anything to the powerful enemies chasing after them. If they fought head-on, they had no chance of winning. Xiao Lingyu also hesitated for a moment, but he still entered the stone door. However, before entering, he had Miao Ying return to the primal chaos spectrum first, only bringing along the invisible Ling Er. Only by relying on Ling Er's perception of the nebula could Xiao Lingyu ensure that she would not lose sight of her target. Behind the stone door, there were 9 tall mountains. They were arranged in a circle, and there were obvious ripples of powerful formations coming from there. The dangerous aura did not come from the fluctuations of the formation. The space here was not very big. At least for an expert like Xiao Lingyu, she could fly over in an instant. Naturally, the dozen or so phantom experts could not continue to escape. Seeing that the enemy had also chased them, they immediately rushed into the dozen or so mountains. Xiao Lingyu first looked at the situation and then invited Fudi out, letting it and Miao Ying guard the stone door together to prevent the group of phantom powerhouses from escaping again. After that, Xiao Lingyu took Ling Er and slowly approached the formation formed by the 9 mountains. In a flat area surrounded by the 9 mountains, there was a large iron pillar that was thousands of feet tall. The large iron pillar was engraved with mysterious and complicated runes, and there were also 9 thick iron chains extending to the 9 mountains. Shockingly, a cultivator who was no less than 500 feet tall was actually tied to the large iron pillar by the 9 iron chains, motionless. The dangerous aura was coming from the cultivator who was bound by the chains. The cultivator's eyes were originally closed, but at this time, he seemed to have noticed the abnormal situation. He opened his eyes, and his face was weak and tired. It seemed that he had been tortured for countless years and had gone through all kinds of hardships. Although the cultivator was tall, his appearance was not much different from a human clan cultivator. He even looked much more handsome than an ordinary human clan cultivator. He had a pair of straight and thick eyebrows, eyes that were as bright as the stars, a straight nose, a white face, and fiery red hair. Only his lips were as pale as snow. Seeing the illusory spirit expert and Xiao Lingyu, the cultivator's body trembled slightly. However, that slight tremble caused the mountains to shake. The runes on the big iron pillar and the 9 iron chains suddenly began to circulate. Waves of scorching flames flowed along the iron chains from the 9 mountains and gathered on the big iron pillar. In an instant, the large iron pillar and the cultivator's body were all ignited by the raging flames, and a strange blood mist constantly emerged from the cultivator's body. The mist then turned into strangely shaped demons, and then quickly dissipated into the formation. The cultivator let out a painful groan, and through the raging flames, one could see that his expression was very painful. It was obvious that the cultivator had been imprisoned here for a long time. He was not a good person. Perhaps the powerhouse who imprisoned the cultivator really wanted to kill him. But he couldn't, so he sealed him here and used the power of the formation to torture and consume him. Seeing such a strange situation, Xiao Lingyu's scalp went numb and his heart trembled. Even though the dozen or so phantom powerhouses were not far away, he did not act rashly. This should also be a powerful evil spirit in the past. He was sealed here by the ancient powerhouse of the God Realm. No one has set foot on this spine peninsula all year round. I didn't expect that such an important place was hidden here. Xiaoling Yu narrowed his eyes and looked. From the aura overflowing from the cultivator's body, he could judge the cultivator's origin. He has been sealed for countless years, but he still seems incomparably powerful. This kind of existence seems to have long surpassed the heaven-reaching realm. Why didn't he ascend to the upper realm back then? His current strength should be much more powerful than the top powerhouses of heaven reaching Sacred Island, right? The more Shaolin Yu looked, the more frightened he became. The situation here was strange. Shaolin Yu rationally gave up on continuing to chase the group of phantom powerhouses and silently withdrew. When he reached the stone door, he led everyone to hide in the primal chaos spectrum, waiting for the group of phantom powerhouses to come out before suddenly launching a sneak attack. The group of illusory spirit experts stayed inside for a full 10 years before cautiously coming out. Just as they walked out of the stone door one after another, Shaolin Yu suddenly appeared, and the sealing technique that he had prepared long ago hit the body of an illusory spirit expert. The body of the illusory spirit expert who was hit instantly stiffened, and he lost the ability to resist and escape. The rest of the phantom powerhouses suddenly trembled. In a panic, they turned around and rushed into the Nine Mountains. Shaolin Yu first brought the sealed phantom powerhouse into the primal chaos spectrum. After handing him over to Linger, he came out again and returned the way he came without hesitation. The sealing technique was something that Shaolin Yu had found from many of the restrictions in the inheritance of the universe. 10 years had passed outside, but 100,000 years had passed in the primal chaos spectrum. Shaolin Yu had been studying this sealing technique all this time. Even though his comprehension was not high, with the help of the inheritance, he was able to master this powerful sealing technique after 100,000 years. Having already captured in Phantom Powerhouse, Shaolin Yu's mission to come to the Spine Peninsula had been completed. Naturally, he did not have the slightest bit of reluctance. However, what he did not expect was that before he could leave the mountain crack, the mountain suddenly collapsed, and an incomparably mighty aura soared into the sky. Even he was sent flying far away by that aura, and the blood in his body surged, causing his face to turn purple as he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Shaolin Yu knew that something was wrong, but he did not turn around and immediately hid in the primal chaos spectrum. Through the light door of the primal chaos spectrum, Shaolin Yu saw the tall, evil spirit standing between heaven and earth with his long hair fluttering in the wind. The evil spirit slowly walked forward. His footsteps were confident and steady, and he had an unparalleled heroic spirit that looked down on the world. As for the 15 phantom powerhouses, they carefully followed behind the evil spirit. The strange thing was that the legendary evil spirit actually did not make a move against the phantom powerhouses. Could it be that these phantom powerhouses are still blocking the stone door because of me? They know that there's no hope of escaping, so they let this evil spirit go? They came here so familiarly. They must have come here often in the past. It's not like they haven't communicated with this evil spirit before. Even if they don't know how to break that formation, this evil spirit must have a very good understanding of that formation after being sealed for so many years. The evil spirit and these phantom powerhouses must have reached some kind of agreement. Just as Shaolin Yu's thoughts were churning, the evil spirit's eyes were staring at the location of the primal chaos spectrum. Not good. He seems to be able to see the primal chaos spectrum. Shaolin Yu's heart could not help but tremble. The evil spirit moved over and extended a palm towards the primal chaos spectrum. It was unknown what kind of magic power that palm possessed, but it was actually able to distort space and time and force the primal chaos spectrum to appear. Li Jia, come out. You're already here. Why are you still hiding? Strangely, the evil spirit's voice was able to penetrate the light door of the primal chaos spectrum and shake the space within. Li Jia? Who is Li Jia? Meowing asked in confusion. Shaolin Yu also did not know who was Li Jia, so he felt that the evil spirit was deliberately bluffing. You and I have worked together under Lord Evil King for many years. Although we have never gotten along, we are still colleagues. Back then, we fought with our full strength. I was sealed here, so I reckon that you must not have had an easy time either. Otherwise, why would you attach yourself to the body of a divine transcendence expert here and wait to be reborn? But you have hidden yourself really well. But I can still clearly sense your aura from him because many years ago, your aura made me feel extremely disgusted. But now, after so many years, when I sensed your aura just now, I actually had an absurd feeling of wanting to hug you. The evil spirit's voice once again entered the primal chaos spectrum. Through his words, Xiaoling Yu roughly understood something. The Li Jia that the evil spirit spoke of should be the evil spirit powerhouse sleeping in Xiaoling Yu's body. Xiaoling Yu felt that the situation was getting worse and worse. He never thought that he would accidentally release such an evil spirit powerhouse on this trip to the peninsula without encountering any invincible savage beasts. Chapter 752. Fine, I won't see you then. I wanted to help you, but I'm sure you won't appreciate my kindness. However, I don't know if Lord Xiao Wang has come out of that damn demon ceiling pagoda yet. If you recovered, let's go to the demon ceiling pagoda together. After saying that, the evil cultivator took another step forward. Although his footsteps were steady, his back seemed lonely and desolate. After more than 3,000 years, Xiaoling Yu left the Spine Peninsula and came to the northeast of Heavenly Saint Island. Along the way, his relatives and friends had hidden in the chaotic spectrum for more than 30 million years. They who had reached the Heavenly Ascension realm finally had a breakthrough in their cultivation. Ling used this time to devour and digest the Phantom Spirit Ascension realm powerhouse, thus advancing to the Heavenly Ascension realm in her cultivation. The evil spirit on the Spine Peninsula broke out of the seal. Although it didn't cause any waves on Heavenly Saint Island, it made Xiaoling Yu realize the urgency of time. He had to follow the Peacock Bright Monarch's words as soon as possible and quickly propose a powerful force of his own. It would be used to resist the evil spirit during the turmoil, protect the cultivators of Earth after the turmoil, and protect the descendants of Earth who came to Heavenly Saint Island to seek a breakthrough in the future. Ling came out of the chaotic spectrum. Her cultivation and soul realm were both at the Heavenly Ascension realm. So she began to use her unique magic to sense the treasures hidden in the vast mountains of Heavenly Saint Island. The divine sense of a Heavenly Ascension realm powerhouse covered an extremely wide range. Ling divine sense and the special power contained in her body spread out, so she could easily find all the places with abnormal energy fluctuations hidden inside. Most places with treasures would have some places with abnormal energy fluctuations. This was Ling's method of searching for treasures. Even if the treasures were buried deep underground and hidden and protected by restrictions or formations, Ling's special power in the Heavenly Ascension realm could still induce a certain degree of fluctuation in the treasures. 30 years after the return, the first treasure was found by Ling. This treasure trove was located in the depths of an extremely secluded cave and was protected by a powerful array formation. However, Xiaoling Yu had obtained the inheritance of the array formation master, Liao Zhou. After all, he could find the best way to break the array formation and the array formation, allowing him to easily take out the treasure trove. Just like that, under Ling's lead, Xiaoling Yu began a thorough search of the northeastern region of Skirich Island. After spending close to 10,000 years, he had discovered more than 50 places where treasures were hidden. He had retrieved countless psychic divine stones and close to 100 divine spiritual treasures left behind by the predecessors. As for the cultivation materials, he had found countless of them. The divine world had existed for countless years, and the Heavenly Connection Sacred Island had always been a gathering place for experts. After countless years of accumulation, the Heavenly Connection Sacred Island naturally had many places to hide treasures. The Heavenly Connection Sacred Island was not a place of good fortune. There were endless opportunities here, but at the same time, there were endless dangers. Therefore, even the most powerful experts could not act recklessly here, let alone plunder the entire Heavenly Connection sacred island. Only a portion of the treasures left behind by the predecessors that were easier to find had been cleared out. After 10,000 years of searching, Xiaoling Yu had also discovered situation. Most of the places where treasures were hidden were relatively dangerous or the most inconspicuous places. With the primal chaos spectrum and Linger's ability to hide, Xiaoling Yu could recklessly barge into those dangerous places. There were very few cultivators or monsters on the Heavenly Connection sacred island that could cause Xiaoling Yu to be wary of. Even if he encountered a particularly powerful existence, he could hide in the primal chaos spectrum and use the powerful attack of the Heavenly Eye of Destruction to launch a sudden sneak attack. If he could not defeat his opponent, he could scare them away or torture them to death. The more treasures Xiaoling Yu cleared out, the more bountiful Xiaoling Yu's harvest became. Among those bountiful treasures, there were many cultivation insights left behind by the predecessors, as well as many introductions to the history of the Heavenly Connection sacred island. These were very useful to Xiaoling Yu. Several thousand years later, Xiaoling Yu had also searched the northern part of the Heavenly Connection sacred island. He had cleared out nearly 100 more treasures. In fact, there were definitely more treasures in the northern and northeastern parts of the island. However, there were some places that even Linger could not find. They could only be left to cultivators who were fated to find them in the future. At this moment, Xiaoling Yu's harvest was enough for him to establish a large organization. Time was of the essence, so he did not continue searching. Instead, he began to establish a large organization. He began from the northern and northeastern parts of the island. Xiaoling Yu first chose several hundred rather bustling markets and recruited a group of saint gods who had nothing to do. He gave them some benefits and had them travel to more markets to spread the news. Xiaoling Yu himself chose a rather large valley and chased away or killed all the demon beasts in the valley. He erected a long stone stele at the entrance of the valley with the words Hua Min written on it. Afterwards, he casually built a few stone buildings in the valley. The Hua Min under his command could be said to have taken root on the island. Afterwards, Xiaoling Yu used his cultivation and formations and restrictions to set up an extremely powerful formation around the valley. Not only had Xiaoling Yu utilized 99 divine spirit treasures of various qualities as the foundation of this grand formation, he'd even utilized the chair left behind by Biao Zhou as the core of the formation. Then he supplemented it with a mountain of psychic divine stones and a few million sets of brilliant restrictions to form a grand formation that even top experts would have a headache trying to break through by force. Xiaoling Yu's cultivation and formations was far inferior to Wan Zhou's in the past. However, the formation he set up was definitely not weak. Even if several peak experts joined forces to attack it, it would definitely be able to hold on for a period of time. After all, there were just too many divine spirit treasures in the formation. Furthermore, these divine spirit treasures could automatically gather the power of nature. Xiaoling Yu had named this formation the 10 Extremes Formation. It possessed 10 formidable abilities such as sealing, killing, illusory, and defensive. Every single one of these abilities, if unleashed at full strength, was not something that a top-notch expert could easily accomplish by himself. However, although the 10 Extremes Formation was powerful, it also had a weakness. Once the formation was activated, it consumed the divine spirit stones at an extremely fast rate. Once it was activated, a large number of divine spirit stones would be turned to dust at every moment. Only Xiaoling Yu knew about this weakness. Now that he had countless divine spirit stones, he did not really care about the consumption of the 10 Extremes Formation. He knew that if a large force wanted to flourish, it had to make its cultivators feel reliable and safe. It also had to be a strong enough deterrent to those who coveted its existence. The 10 Extremes Formation was a great deterrent that the Hua Min placed in front of all the experts on Heavenly Saint Island. With their wealth and the powerful 10 Extremes Formation, if the Hua Min wanted to attract experts to join them, they only needed a group of experts to join them in advance. There was no need to look for this group of experts. Miao Ying, Qing Xian, Ling Er, Devourer of Heaven, and Fudi were all considered. Even Yuru, who had not said whether she wanted to stay or leave, was also considered. After all, they were all in the heavenly saint realm and were relatively powerful. They were all extraordinary to begin with, and in addition to the treasures they had searched for many years, they were naturally not weak. The cultivators who went out to advertise the Hua men gradually became useful. After several hundred years, cultivators began to come to the Hua men's residence. Even if they did not choose to join the Hua men in the end, they would mention the Hua men to their friends and family after leaving. However, the Hua men's treatment was very good. Most of the cultivators who came because of its reputation were willing to join the Hua men. Man walked to the top, and water flowed to the bottom. Many experts who already had their own factions also jumped ship after hearing about the Hua men's strength and generous treatment. Like other large factions, those who joined the Hua men had to swear an oath that they would never betray the Hua men. The Hua men did not restrict cultivators from joining before leaving. However, even if they left, they could not become enemies with the Hua men in the future. Since they would receive generous treatment, they would also have to bear certain responsibilities and obligations. For example, they would have to listen to the orders of the master of the Hua men and do their best for the development of the Hua men. After they made the oath, Shaolin Yu would give them a considerable amount of spiritual stones in advance. As for the allocation of magic treasures, pills, and top-notch cultivation methods, they would have to stay in the Hua men for a long time and become familiar with them. They would also have to make contributions or show absolute loyalty before Shaolin Yu would gradually give them out. Qing Xian had some experience in establishing a faction. Therefore, the management of the Hua men on heaven-reaching Sacred Island was handed over Qing Xian by Shaolin Yu. In fact, while Shaolin Yu was on the way to the Spine Peninsula and back, the other experts who had successfully made it into the top 10 in the Holy Army's Great Battle Arena had also started to establish their own factions with the help of various parties. They had recruited the experts who were originally idle on heaven-reaching Sacred Island. This had already attracted the attention of everyone on heaven-reaching Sacred Island. However, many of the idle experts were waiting for Shaolin Yu, who had obtained first place. When these experts heard about the Hua men, they naturally came over. They would not immediately join the Hua men. They would first investigate before making a decision. Shaolin Yu was already very famous. In addition, the Hua men had already shown signs of being a top faction. Naturally, there were many more experts who were willing to join the faction than the other experts. However, just as the Hua men was becoming more and more prosperous, the news that the leader of the Hua men was an expert from Earth spread from heaven-reaching Sacred Island. This made many experts who were preparing to join the Hua men hesitate. This was because for countless years, the cultivators of Earth were not willing to be associated with the cultivators of other factions. This was because when the cultivators of Earth were strong in the past, they had a history of bloodshed and suppression. However, this news only stopped a small number of cultivators from joining the Hua men. Most of the experts who were prepared to join the Hua men still came resolutely. After all, the strength of the Hua men and the leader of the Hua men was obvious to all. After all, the treatment of the Hua men was the best among all the newly established factions. If this had been in the past, everyone might have hesitated. However, things are different now. The news of the impending invasion of the demons spread like wildfire. Everyone wanted to find a safe place to stay before the chaos arrived. The 10 ultimate formations of the Hua men made them feel safe and reliable. The Hua men were like a new star, rising slowly on heaven, reaching Sacred Island, and attracting the attention of everyone. There was no need for Shaolin Yu and the Hua men cultivators to take the trouble to spread the news. Now, the Hua men was known by most of the cultivators who often came out of heaven, reaching Sacred Island. Shaolin Yu continued to search for treasures with Ling Er when she was free, enriching the accumulation and foundation of the Hua men. It was time for the fourth watch. Everyone no longer suspected that Xiao Fei was boasting. Actually, sometimes, Xiao Fei felt that everyone should calm down and not use harsh words to bully the author. The author sat in front of the computer for more than 10 hours, not because of everyone's criticism, but because he was also a human and had his own troubles. He had his own ups and downs, and his state of mind and emotions would occasionally fluctuate. When he worked hard to write, stayed up late, smoked, and had a sore back, he needed more encouragement than being forced to step by step. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.